Chapter 3064. Position Zhuowen took out a communication jade talisman from his waist. He planned to send a message to Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing to ask how they were doing. He also wanted to know if the war between the human race and the alien race had ended after sending the message. Zhuowen waited silently for a while before the communication jade talisman lit up. Zhuowen glanced at it and saw that it was Yao Xiangjuan's reply. In her reply, Yao Xiangjuan told Zhuowen not to worry about her and Jiang Qixing. They were doing well and had already returned to the space camp. As for the war between the human race and the alien race, it was said that it was very tragic. The human race and the alien race had suffered countless casualties. 2 of the 4 space camps of the human race had been conquered by the alien race. They were the Eastern Camp and the Northern Camp. Because both sides had suffered heavy losses, the 4 Tao masters of the human race, the war god of the sorcerer race, the Yangshi Union, and the Phoenix people's great elder Mu, you had signed an agreement. For the next 1,000 years, the human race and the alien race were not allowed to start a large-scale war. If either side broke the agreement, they would be cursed by the heavenly Tao oath. Zhuowen looked at the message in the communication jade talisman. He could see the helplessness in Yao Xiangjuan's expression when she sent this message. The Star Wars battlefield was a natural barrier that separated the Xian-Mi heavenly domain and the primitive heavenly domain. It was also the last barrier between the Xian-Mi heavenly domain and the primitive heavenly domain. But now, half of the 4 space camps of the human race had been conquered by the alien race. This was an absolute humiliation for the human race. Speaking of which, Zhuowen did not have many feelings for the Xian-Mi heavenly domain. After all, he had only been in the Xian-Mi heavenly domain for a few hundred years. Moreover, he had been chased by the 10 extreme Incorp sect in the Xian-Mi heavenly domain and had been betrayed by the Pill Array Immortal Alliance to the Blood Prison. Therefore, Zhuowen did not have a good impression of the Xian-Mi heavenly domain, let alone a sense of belonging. However, although he did not have much of a sense of belonging to the Xian-Mi heavenly domain, he hated the unreasonable alien race even more. In the war between the human race and the alien race, he naturally stood on the side of the human race. He did not want the alien race to achieve any results. Now that the eastern and northern space camps had been invaded by the alien races, Zhuowen was very unhappy. However, Zhuowen also knew that no matter how unhappy he was, he couldn't change the current situation of the battle. After all, his strength wasn't even comparable to the early Sky-reaching Lord. In this battle between the human race and the foreign races, he was just a cannon fodder. It seems that the war between the human race and the alien race has come to an end. Kid, are you planning to return to the camp? Or are you... Xiaohe looked at Zhuowen and hesitated. He already knew about Mu Chenxue. Given Zhuowen's personality, he was afraid that he would go to the Phoenix people of the primitive heaven realm. I plan to return to the Starry Sky camp first. My points should be enough for me to exchange for a heavenly level elixir in the Starry Sky Tower. Perhaps the Starry Sky Tower has the heavenly level elixir I need. Zhuowen said seriously, "By the way, didn't you capture the Saint of the Phoenix people? The Saint has a high status in the primitive heaven realm. She should know the geography of the primitive heaven realm like the back of her hand. Since you haven't been to the primitive heaven realm, I think you can get some information from the Saint about the geography of the primitive heaven realm." Xiaohe suddenly said. Zhuowen nodded. With a thought, he brought Xiaohe into the outside world. In the outside world, the sun, moon, and stars rotated. Sunrise and sunset alternated. Mountains, hills, grasslands, deserts, and various other landforms could be seen everywhere in the outside world. The outside world looked even bigger than many planets with life. It was even more vibrant and full of vitality. Zhuowen came to a valley filled with tulips. In the depths of the valley, there was a clear and huge lake. In the center of the lake, there was a rather large island. There was a rather luxurious villa on the island. Zhuowen glanced at the villa on the island, shook his head, and said, "It seems that Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia really know how to enjoy life." Xiao He crossed her little paws in front of her chest, raised her chin, and said proudly, "I asked those two to build this villa on the island. It's for me to escape the heat." Zhuowen looked at Xiao He speechlessly. This guy was just a divine sword. He didn't feel like a human at all, yet he was shamelessly boasting that he needed to escape the heat. He really had enough of this guy. Two figures flew out of the villa and landed in front of Zhuowen. They respectfully greeted him as master. These two were naturally Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia. Zhuowen nodded and said, "How is the Saint of the Phoenix people?" "The Saint is inside. We have been guarding her all this time. We didn't dare to slack off in the slightest." Yin Wuxia and Ghost Plume carefully led Zhuowen into the villa on the island. In the secluded room, Zhuowen looked at the beautiful figure in front of him with her back facing him and said indifferently, "How have you been recently, Saint?" The Saint turned around and glared at Zhuowen with resentment. "Thanks to you, my 99 Phoenix body bloodline has been extracted by you, and my cultivation is constantly declining. Now, my cultivation has been sealed by you, and I'm under house arrest here like a bird in a cage. Do you think I'm doing well? There are mountains and rivers here, and there are even people to serve you. The environment is also so secluded and elegant. How many people dream of a place like this? You're still not satisfied with all this?" Zhuowen casually sat on a wooden armchair and crossed his legs as he spoke frivolously. The Saint looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "You don't visit a temple without a cause. You're here because you're being chased by Elder Hong. Now, you have a request, right? As long as you return the bloodline of the 99 Phoenix body to me, kneel before me, swear loyalty to me, and become my dog, I can plead for leniency on your behalf in front of Elder Hong and spare your dog life." The Saint was confident in her victory. The moment she escaped, she knew that Elder Hong would definitely chase after her. After all, she was the Saint of the Phoenix people. She had a special position in the clan, and Elder Hong would not leave her behind. However, what made the Saint a little anxious was that Elder Hong was only now looking for Zhuowen. That was why Zhuowen had come to ask her to plead for him. Slap. Unfortunately, after the Saint finished speaking, she felt her cheeks burning. She fell directly to the ground and covered her face with her hands as she looked at the indifferent young man in front of her in disbelief. "Saint, you'd better restrain your arrogant attitude in front of me, because I hate this kind of attitude the most. Also, some of your guesses are correct. The Elder Hong you mentioned, who is also the second elder of the Phoenix clan, did try to kill me because of you. In order to escape from his pursuit, I gave up my most important trump card. That trump card is very precious. Your life is not as precious as mine. If I didn't have some questions to ask you, I would have killed you for what you said just now. Also, the next time you speak, you'd better be clear about your position. You're my captive now. If I want to kill you, it's just a thought. Don't think that I won't dare to kill you just because you're the Saint of the Phoenix people." Chapter 3065. The Hunchbacked Man. Elder Hong tried to kill you? How did you manage to escape? The Saintess forgot about the pain on her cheek as she stared at Zhuowen. She was well aware of Elder Hong's strength. Even in the primitive heaven realm, he was invincible among those of the same level. Back then, Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and in Shaojin, the three sky-piercing masters had joined forces to fight Elder Hong. In the end, they were suppressed by Elder Hong. Recognize your current situation. Otherwise, I don't mind teaching you a lesson. Zhuowen's voice was filled with cold, killing intent. The saintess trembled when she saw the killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes. She finally realized that she was no longer the high and mighty saintess of the Phoenix clan. She was now just a captive of this young man from the human clan. What do you want to ask? The saintess forced herself to calm down and asked in a low voice. I need a rough geographical map of the primitive heaven realm, a map of the route to the Phoenix people, and a method to enter the primitive heaven realm. Zhuowen said calmly, You want to enter the primitive heaven realm? The saintess looked up in surprise and sized up Zhuowen. She wondered if this young man's brain had been kicked by a donkey. A mere human actually wanted to enter the primitive heaven realm. That was simply courting death. But soon, the saintess was overjoyed. She knew that if this human really wanted to enter the primitive heaven realm, it would definitely be beneficial for her. The sense of power of human beings was way too sensitive to non-humankind beings. Any human being who entered the prehistorical heavenly realm would become a rat on the street, chased by countless non-humankind beings in the prehistorical heavenly realm, and eventually die. As long as this human died in the primitive heaven realm, she would have a chance to escape from him and reclaim the bloodline of the 99 Phoenix body. This was an opportunity. The saintess lowered her head, and her eyes emitted a sharp light. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Or do you not have what I want? Zhuowen looked at the saintess, who suddenly lowered her head, and couldn't help but sneer in his heart. He naturally knew what the saintess was thinking. However, he didn't mind. His clone wasn't a human, but a member of the devouring clan. After entering the great desolate heaven realm, as long as he did not reveal his true body and only revealed his avatar, he would not be like the other humans who would be chased and beaten by everyone. Yes, I have all of those that you mentioned. The holy maiden hurriedly took out a jade slip and a sheepskin scroll from her spiritual ring and handed them to Zhuowen. She said, This jade slip records the geographical location of the primitive heavenly realm and the division of forces. The goatskin scroll contains the specific route to the Phoenix people. Also, I know a shortcut to enter the great desolate heaven realm. Even if you are a human, as long as you enter that shortcut, you will be able to enter the great desolate heaven realm smoothly. Zhuowen put away the jade slip and the goatskin scroll. After looking at them for a while, he found that they didn't look like replicas. He knew that the saintess had given him the real thing. Thank you. Zhuowen put away the goatskin scroll and the jade slip and said indifferently, When will you go to the great desolate heaven realm? The saintess of the Phoenix people hurriedly asked after seeing Zhuowen put away the jade slip and the goatskin scroll. What? Do you really want me to go to the great desolate heaven realm? Zhuowen looked at the saintess and said coldly, Not really. I was just casually asking. The saintess turned her head, trying to cover it up. When I want to go, I will let you lead the way. After saying that, Zhuowen left the room. After instructing Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia to look after the saintess, he left Xiaohe in the outside world and left the outside world. After leaving the cave, Zhuowen found that this place was indeed the ruins near the Door of Darkness, just as Xiaohe had said. The area around the Door of Darkness was deserted. There was no one around. After leaving the Door of Darkness, Zhuowen rushed towards the outskirts of the dark ancient city. Along the way, he saw many corpses of humans and foreign races. However, he didn't see any living ones. The surviving humans and foreign races were probably negotiating and signing contracts at the Starry Sky camp. After leaving the dark ancient city, Zhuowen directly rushed towards the Starry Sky camp. After a while, Zhuowen quietly landed near the Starry Sky Tower. His arrival didn't attract too much attention. Before Zhuowen came to the Starry Sky Tower, he had changed his appearance again. This time, He was a middle-aged man with dark skin. In addition, he only had the aura of an eternal overlord, so no one paid attention to him. After all, during this period of time, there were other cultivators like Zhuowen who had returned from the outside world. At this moment, the atmosphere around the Starry Sky Tower was very solemn. The colorful restrictions that were originally set up around the Starry Sky Tower had all been removed, with the Starry Sky Tower as the center. Among the 4 Starry Sky camps, the Western and Southern Starry Sky camps restrictions were somewhat damaged. However, they were still intact. The buildings in the camps were also neatly erected. The human cultivators were all standing in these 2 camps. As for the Eastern and Northern Starry Sky camps, the surface restrictions on the Eastern and Northern Starry Sky camps were completely broken. Most of the buildings inside were in ruins. The ground was cracked, and countless corpses were piled up. The Eastern and Northern Starry Sky camps were very large. However, there were only human corpses inside. There were no human cultivators standing. Instead, there were all kinds of foreign races of all shapes and sizes. It seems that the information that junior sister Yao sent me was correct. The Eastern and Northern Starry Sky camps have really been taken over by the foreign races. It seems that both sides are about to sign an agreement. After Zhuowen landed on the Starry Sky Tower, he looked around and couldn't help but frown as he thought to himself. Zhuowen wasn't very interested in the agreement between the human race and the foreign races. What he was most interested in now was whether he could exchange for the heaven-piercing divine herbs in the Starry Sky Tower with the Starry Sky token that he now had 1,000,000 points. Thinking of this, Zhuowen walked towards the Starry Sky Tower. The Starry Sky Tower's square was packed with people. However, when Zhuowen entered the Starry Sky Tower, he found that there was basically no one inside. There were many counters in the Starry Sky Tower. On the counters, there were huge banners with a lot of information on them. Most of them were mission information. As long as one completed the missions on the banners, they would be able to obtain the corresponding points. Of course, the points rewarded for completing missions were far less than killing foreign races. However, completing missions was much safer than killing foreign races. Many human cultivators liked to complete missions to obtain points. At this moment, there were basically no managers at the counters in the Starry Sky Tower. They should have gone to the square to watch the agreement between the human race and the foreign races. I say, brother, what are you doing here? Our human race and the foreign races are about to sign an unfair agreement. This is a disgrace to our human race. Everyone else has gone out to watch. Why are you still in the Starry Sky Tower? Chapter 66. 1,000 Years Without Flowers. You are? Zhuowen asked. I'm just a gatekeeper, the gatekeeper of the entrance to the upper levels of the Tower of Stars. The hunchbacked man was quite enthusiastic as he chuckled at Zhuowen and continued, Today is an important day. I don't think anyone will use their points to exchange for things in the Tower of Stars, so I'm planning to close the entrance and go out to take a look. You have to go to the upper levels of the tower to exchange for things in the Tower of Stars. Zhuowen looked at the closed entrance behind the hunchbacked man and asked in surprise. The hunchbacked man looked at Zhuowen strangely, as if he was looking at an alien, and said, I say, brother, have you never exchanged anything in the Tower of Stars before? Zhuowen said embarrassedly, I just got the Universal Star token not long ago, and went out not long ago. I had some gains and just came back, so I want to exchange for something. The hunchbacked man looked at Zhuowen speechlessly and said, I say, brother, you just got the Universal Star token not long ago, so you shouldn't have many points, right? You have to know that the lowest level of the Tower of Stars costs at least 1,000 points. Otherwise, you won't even have the qualifications to enter the entrance. You can come back to exchange after you have accumulated more points. Let's go out and see how the negotiations are going. The hunchbacked man couldn't wait to go out and see how the negotiations between the human race and the foreign race were going. Zhuowen hurriedly pulled the hunchbacked man and said, "Brother, I already have more than 1,000 points. I have something very important that I want to exchange for now." Zhuowen was in such a hurry to exchange for points, mainly because he felt that it wasn't safe to be near the Tower of Stars, and he had many enemies here. He was afraid that the longer he stayed in the Tower of Stars, the greater the chances of him being exposed, so he wanted to exchange for the heaven-level divine medicine as soon as possible and leave as soon as possible. The hunchbacked man looked at Zhuowen with some annoyance. He took out a key from his bosom and handed it to Zhuowen. "I'm in a hurry to see the negotiations. This is the key to the entrance. Open the door yourself. But remember to return the key to me after you're done." After he finished speaking, the hunchbacked man threw a jade slip to Zhuowen and said that this jade slip contained information about the things to take note of when exchanging in the Starry Sky Tower. Then he hurriedly left the Starry Sky Tower. Zhuowen couldn't help but shake his head as he watched the hunchbacked man leave. After that, his divine sense extended into the jade slip and roughly looked through its contents. The jade strip indeed contained information about the upper levels of the Starry Sky Tower. The Starry Sky Tower had a total of 9 floors. Each floor corresponded to an item of a corresponding level. For example, on the first floor, one could exchange for an item of the first step of Tao validation, the first realm of heavenly Tao. The minimum requirement to enter was 1,000 points. The minimum required points to exchange for primordial Tao items on the second level was 5,000 points. On the 7th, 8th, and 9th levels, one could exchange for creation grade, and heaven grade items, respectively. However, the requirements for these 3 levels were also extremely high. The 7th level required at least 200,000 points, while the 8th level required 500,000 points. The most terrifying one should be the 9th level, which required 1,000,000 points to enter. Even Zhongli Hao Yen, who was ranked first on the Starry Sky contribution list, could only enter the 7th level of the Starry Sky Tower. She didn't even have the qualifications to enter the 8th level. After gaining a general understanding of the Starry Sky Tower's exchange system, Zhuowen took out the key and opened the door to the upper levels of the Starry Sky Tower. He stepped in while holding his Starry Sky token in his hand. The series of numbers on the Starry Sky token was even more breathtaking. Zhuowen followed the steps behind the door and walked straight up, passing through one level after another. He found that every level had a powerful barrier that prevented him from entering the next level. However, the numbers on Zhuowen's Starry Sky token were too dazzling. The moment he approached these barriers, Zhuowen basically didn't encounter any obstacles. In other words, in front of him, these barriers were like nothing. After all, he had the qualifications to enter the 9th level. In the end, Zhuowen arrived at the 9th level. He passed through the barrier of the 9th level's entrance and smoothly entered the interior of the 9th level. The interior of the 9th level wasn't very spacious. The surrounding walls were a little dilapidated and were gray in color. It was as if the surrounding walls were piled up with gray stone bricks. Above his head was a semicircular dome. The surface of the dome should be a painting. However, this painting was badly damaged. Zhuowen could only vaguely see that this painting was of a man. In front of the man was a black mass. He didn't know what species they were. Zhuowen felt that the black mass was more like a foreign race army. However, because the painting was too badly damaged, he couldn't tell if it was a foreign race army or not. In the end, Zhuowen's gaze landed on the center of the space. There was a sparkling and translucent crystal pillar standing there. The surface of this pillar was flowing with blue light spots. It had a mysterious beauty to it. This should be the exchange center. Zhuowen's gaze turned serious. He had seen the jade slip that the hunchbacked man gave him and knew that every level had an exchange center. In order to exchange for the items inside, he had to place his Starry Sky token in the corresponding position of the exchange center. He saw a groove at the bottom left of the crystal pillar. The groove was about the same size as the Starry Sky token. Zhuowen placed the Starry Sky token in the groove. Instantly, the flowing blue light spots on the crystal pillar converged into a blue light ray and entered between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Zhuowen closed his eyes. A large amount of information appeared in his mind. These information were all related to the heaven-grade items on the 9th level. These information were divided into divine equipment, talisman, array, divine medicine, and so on. Zhuowen chose the divine medicine category. He realized that there were only 3 types of divine medicine. These 3 types of divine medicine were all heaven-grade divine medicine. These 3 types of divine medicine were the 6 Soul gathering bamboo, the 1,000-year flowerless eyes, and the heavenly 1 green lotus. They were all heaven-grade divine medicine. The 1,000-year flowerless eyes was the heaven-grade divine medicine that Zhuowen needed. It was also one of the 6 ingredients needed to concoct the 6 Desires Spirit Condensation Saint Pill. It actually requires 1,050,000 points. Luckily, I only have so many points on me. Zhuowen looked at the points required to exchange for the 1,000-year flowerless eyes and couldn't help but smile bitterly. The heaven-grade divine medicine was indeed extremely expensive. In order to obtain 1,000,000 points, he had risked his life. Now, he had spent all of them. What made him speechless was that the other 2 heaven-grade divine medicines were even more expensive than the 1,000-year flowerless eyes. This meant that if he were to exchange for those 2 divine medicines, he probably wouldn't have enough points. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. He saw a drawer under the crystal pillar in front of him. In the drawer, there was a black jade box. Chapter 3067. Privilege after keeping the jade box. Zhuowen took out the Starry Sky token from the groove at the bottom of the crystal pillar. What surprised Zhuowen was that his Starry Sky token had changed. His Starry Sky token was originally jade-colored, but now it had turned into the color of the starry sky. It was as if the starry sky was the background, dotted with countless stars. It looked rather resplendent and gorgeous. Zhuowen picked up the Starry Sky token and scrutinized it carefully. He realized that other than the color of the Starry Sky token changing, the numbers on the front of the Starry Sky token had completely disappeared. It looked as if it had just been made and nothing was carved on it yet. Could it be that the Starry Sky token will change greatly after the exchange? Zhuowen was puzzled. In the jade slip that the hunchbacked man gave him, he didn't see any description of the Starry Sky token changing. Congratulations! My dear Long One, you are the first cultivator to have accumulated 1,000,000 points since the establishment of the Starry Sky Tower. As the first in history, you have certain privileges. Suddenly, an elegant voice resounded in the space. Zhuowen jumped up in fright and rushed to the entrance of the 9th level. He looked around the 9th level cautiously. The voice appeared too abruptly. Zhuowen couldn't even tell where the voice came from. My dear Long One, don't be afraid. I'm in your hands. You're too nervous. You're hurting me. The elegant voice was slightly stiff. It was then that Zhuowen realized that the voice came from the Starry Sky token in his hands. At this moment, the Starry Sky token left Zhuowen's hands and floated in front of him. The surface of the Starry Sky token had the texture of a starry sky. You are. Zhuowen frowned and asked, I am the pagoda spirit of this Starry Sky Tower. When the Starry Sky Tower was first built, I already existed. The voice continued. I see. What are the privileges that you mentioned? Zhuowen asked curiously. This privilege allows you to use the power of the Starry Sky Tower once. The voice continued to linger in Zhuowen's ears. Zhuowen carefully looked at the Starry Sky token floating in front of him and said in a somewhat speechless manner, "What benefits can I get from using the Starry Sky Tower's energy? I don't think I need it." The voice suddenly fell silent, and after a long time, it seemed to gnash its teeth and said, "Don't you know anything about the Starry Sky Tower? Do you know how precious this privilege is?" Zhuowen smiled innocently and shrugged. "I just came to the Star Wars battlefield not long ago, so I really haven't heard about the Star Tower." The voice fell silent once more before it said helplessly, "I'll explain it to you simply. The Starry Sky Tower contains many heaven-piercing spirit arrays and restrictions. The energy contained within them is so terrifying that it's enough to annihilate a quarter of the Xianmi heavenly domain. Tell me, is there no benefit for you to have the privilege of using the Starry Sky Tower's energy?" Zhuowen's pupils shrank. He didn't expect the energy contained within the Starry Sky Tower to be so terrifying that it could annihilate a quarter of the Xianmi heavenly domain. It should be known that the Xianmi heavenly domain was not one of the small heavenly domains in the 8 major heavenly domains. It was a truly vast and incomparably huge heavenly domain. It was vast and had countless planes and worlds. There were countless living beings, almost innumerable. Just the host region alone had 5 Tao Palace level forces, and the leaders of these 5 Tao Palace level forces were all early-stage heaven-piercing masters. This was just the host region. The Xianmi heavenly domain still had 3 other major heavenly domains. In other words, if the Starry Sky Tower's energy erupted, it could annihilate the entire Eastern Tao domain. How powerful would the energy be to achieve this? You said that I have the privilege of using the Starry Sky Tower's energy. What should I do to use it? Zhuowen was a little excited and couldn't help but ask. It's very simple. If you need it, just say, "I need you" to the Starry Sky token in your hand. I will hear your call and allow you to use the Starry Sky Tower's energy once. That's right. You can only use it near the Starry Sky Tower. If you leave the range of the Starry Sky Tower, it won't work even if you shout, "I need you." The voice stopped abruptly at this point. Zhuowen was speechless. He actually needed to say, "I need you to use this privilege." It was such a Chinibu slogan. However, it was a blessing to have such a privilege. At least Zhuowen knew that his safety was guaranteed when he was near the Starry Sky Tower. After all, the voice had said that the energy within the Starry Sky Tower had the terrifying power to annihilate a quarter of the Xianmi heavenly domain. Zhuowen took another deep look at the space of the 9th floor before leaving the entrance and walking down the stairs. Now that he had no more points in his Starry Sky token, he couldn't enter any of the exchange centers on the Starry Sky Tower. Naturally, he had to go down. After leaving the Starry Sky Tower, Zhuowen quickly found the hunchbacked man. The hunchbacked man was standing on a square not far from the Starry Sky Tower. He was staring straight ahead, as if he was looking at a mortal enemy. Zhuowen came to the hunchbacked man's side and greeted him. After returning the key to him, his gaze followed the hunchbacked man's line of sight and landed in the direction of the eastern camp. In the eastern camp, the Yangtung Union and Muyu were leading a group of foreign race elites towards the Starry Sky Tower. In the northern and western parts of the Starry Sky Tower, the 4 Tao Lords were also slowly walking over, surrounded by human race cultivators. Among the 4 Tao Lords, the eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua, was severely injured. His footsteps were a little weak, and he was being supported by others. Originally, the other Tao Lords wanted Tan Xinghua to go back and recuperate. However, Tan Xinghua insisted on coming over to sign the agreement with the foreign race. The other human cultivators behind him sighed in their hearts when they saw Tan Xinghua's miserable state. The reason Tan Xinghua was severely injured was mainly because the war god of the sorcerer tribe, the Yang-tongued Union, was too terrifying. Although the Yang-tongued Union and Tan Xinghua were both at the middle stage of the heaven-connecting realm, the Yang-tongued Union was already at the peak of the middle stage of the heaven-connecting realm. His battle strength was almost unmatched in the Eldritch Heaven domain. Tan Xinghua only managed to hold on for 100 rounds under the Yang-tongued Union's attacks. He was almost beaten to death. If Tan Xinghua didn't have a life-saving trump card, he would have died in the hands of the Yang-tongued Union. After Tan Xinghua was severely injured, the eastern camp didn't hold on for long before it was taken over by the Yang-tongued Union. Then, the Yang-tongued Union attacked again and helped the other foreign races to take over the northern camp. Chapter 3068. Negotiation. Originally, the foreign races didn't intend to negotiate with the human race. However, they didn't continue to attack because they feared the power of the Starry Sky Tower. The Starry Sky Tower was the foundation of the human race in the Starry Sky battlefield. Generations of heaven-reaching masters had spent countless years to build it. It was the treasure of the human race. The energy contained within the Starry Sky Tower was extremely shocking. Once the human race went all out and used the Starry Sky Tower, the invading foreign races would all die. However, the human race didn't dare to do so unless they had no other choice. This was because the energy of the Starry Sky Tower could only be used once. After that, the Starry Sky Tower would be completely destroyed, and the human race would lose their foundation and final protection in the Starry Sky battlefield. Both the human race and the foreign races knew how powerful the Starry Sky Tower was, so they didn't dare to fight to the death. This was especially true for the foreign races. They had already taken down 2 of the human race's space camps, which was already a huge gain. This was because the foreign races could use the eastern and northern space camps to continuously invade Xian Mi Heavenly Region's North Dao region and Host region. A huge round table had been prepared under the Starry Sky Tower. There were 4 seats on both sides of the round table. The 4 Dao masters sat on one side of the round table. The Yangjiao, Muyu, and the leaders of the other 2 races sat on the other side. The 8 of them sat facing each other. 4 Dao masters. Signing this agreement is the wisest decision you've made in all these years. I should applaud you. After the Yangjiao sat down, he laughed loudly and clapped his hands. His voice was very arrogant and loud. The human cultivators around the Starry Sky Tower all glared at the Yangjiao. This fellow was too arrogant. Muyu sat beside the Yangjiao with a smile on her face. She flicked her finger and took out a golden scroll. She said, "This is the specific agreement. 4 Dao masters, take a good look." The 4 Dao masters took the scroll and glanced at it. Their faces instantly turned gloomy. The Eastern Dao master, Tan Xinghua, slammed the table and said, "Aren't you going too far? We agreed to give up the 2 space camps, but we didn't allow you to use the passage to Xianmi Heavenly Region. We've decided to seal that passage. You foreign races can only move about in the space camps." The other 3 Dao Lords were also glaring at Muyu and the Yangjiao Union coldly. The smile on Muyu's face did not change, but her eyes were cold as she said, "These 2 space camps were conquered by us, so they are our territory. If you didn't beg for mercy, we wouldn't only have 2 space camps, but 4. The 4 Dao Lords fell silent. Speaking of which, they were indeed the ones who had proposed a ceasefire. In any case, I won't agree to it. At worst, we'll activate all the energy in the Starry Sky Tower and raise everything here to the ground. We'll all die together." Tan Xinghua was clearly very agitated. He stood up and coldly looked at Mu Yu and the sheep-tongue combination. Mu Yu furrowed her brows and was about to retort when the sheep-tongue harmony stopped her and said with a smile, "Actually, we are not unreasonable people. I can consider your conditions. But before we sign the agreement, I have a small request. As long as you can fulfill this small request of mine, I will be happy to consider your proposal." Tan Xinghua calmed down and returned to his seat. The other 3 Dao lords revealed hopeful gazes as well. Tan Xinghua asked, "What is it?" The sheep-tongue harmony suddenly raised his hand and pointed at the enormous universal contribution ranking on the plaza before the Starry Sky Tower. He said, "Your universal contribution ranking has someone called Long One, right? I want this young man from the human race. As long as you give me the Long One, I can agree to your conditions of sealing off the passageways between the 2 space camps." The 4 Dao lords frowned when they heard the sheep-tongue harmony's words, and the humans behind them were in an uproar. The expressions of Jiang Qixing, Yao Xiangjuan, Zhongli, Hao Yan, and the others who had come into contact with Zhuowen changed drastically. They were truly quite curious. Why did the sheep-tongue harmony ask for the Long One by name? According to their knowledge, the sheep-tongue harmony had never seen the Long One at all. The 4 Dao lords were puzzled as well, but they were hesitant at the same time. They had never seen the Long One before, but they had a deep impression of it. This was because the Long One's points had skyrocketed by 1,000,000 in an instant, and it had caused quite a stir in the human race's team. The 4 Dao lords suspected that Long One might have killed a heaven-reaching master of the alien race, and they knew that he was a once-in-a-lifetime genius of the human race. If they had the chance, they planned to meet Long One and give some guidance to such a genius junior. However, they hadn't expected that the sheep-tongue harmony would request the Long One before signing the agreement. Zhuowen, who was standing beside the hunchbacked man on the plaza, narrowed his eyes and glanced coldly at the sheep-tongue harmony. He knew that the sheep-tongue harmony was looking for him, mainly because they wanted the inheritance of ancestor Shaman Gonggong. Speaking of which, the shaman tribe was a direct descendant of the ancestor shaman, and they cared more about the ancestor shaman's corpse than anyone else. Zhuowen wasn't surprised that the sheep-tongue harmony had come looking for him. However, he found it strange that the shaman tribe hadn't been seen among the alien races when the news of ancestor shaman Gonggong's corpse had spread in the dark ancient city. Could it be that the shaman tribe thought that the news was fake, so they didn't send anyone? Now that the news had been confirmed and had been obtained by him, they proposed a condition to capture him. Zhuowen's guess was right. The shaman tribe had always believed in the prophecy of the tribe's priests that the ancestor shaman's corpse would only appear in the primitive heavenly domain. So they subconsciously thought that the news of the ancestor shaman's corpse in the dark ancient city was fake. However, they had miscalculated this time. Taking down Zhuowen was actually a remedy for the yang-tongued harmony. Of course, Zhuowen also knew that the sheep-tongue harmony had the intention of the Phoenix people to capture him. After all, the Phoenix people's saintess was still in his hands, and the Phoenix people couldn't ignore this matter. That Long One didn't offend you, right? Why do you want him? Tan Xinghua asked with a gloomy face. The sheep-tongue harmony smiled, as if they had already known that Tan Xinghua would ask this question. They pointed to Mu Yu beside them and said, "This is the Grand Elder of the Phoenix people. I think you all know her. The reason why I have this request is that Long One has gone too far and kidnapped the Phoenix people's saintess. It was the Grand Elder who asked me to make this request. That Long One is merely a human. I believe that the 4 Dao Lords will satisfy such a small request of mine." The yang-tongued combination smiled faintly, appearing very gentlemanly, and his smile even carried a trace of ridicule. Chapter 3069. Exposed. Oh, Dao Master Tan, Are you sure that Long Wen is that important compared to the safety of the cultivators in your Xianmi heavenly region? He's just a junior. As long as you hand him over, we're willing to let the human race seal off the passage between the eastern and northern camps. The yang-tongued combination said indifferently, "This is already the biggest compromise that our foreign race can make. Can't you even hand over one person?" Mu Yu, who was sitting beside the yang-tongued combination, sneered. Tan Xinghua was so angry that he wanted to slam the table again, but he was stopped by the Western Dao master, LV Yeliang. "Old Tan, we have to discuss this properly. After all, Long Wen is a stranger that we've never seen before. Although he suddenly rose to the top of the universal contribution ranking, he's really insignificant compared to the cultivators in our Xianmi heavenly region. You should consider this from the standpoint of the majority." LV Yeliang transmitted his voice to Tan Xinghua. "Yes, old Tan, calm down. We're negotiating with the foreign race now. It's not the time to be impulsive." The Northern Dao master, Yao Jianhua, also transmitted his voice. Tan Xinghua's eyes flickered. He sat down and finally calmed down. The four Dao masters began to discuss something in low voices. Their voices were very soft, and the many humans standing around and observing basically couldn't hear what the four Dao masters were discussing. Zhuowen, who was standing beside the hunchbacked man, had an ugly expression on his face. When Tan Xinghua was stopped by LV Yeliang, he had already guessed that the four Dao masters were prepared to compromise and agree to the yang-tongued combination's request. After all, Long Wen, who he was disguised as, had no sense of existence before. He had no relationship with the four Dao masters and had never even met them. He didn't think that the four Dao masters would sacrifice the interests of the human race for a genius that they hadn't even met before. In fact, it was the wisest choice for Zhuowen to leave the Starry Sky Tower now. However, Zhuowen also knew that it was the most dangerous time for him to leave the Starry Sky Tower. At this crucial moment, all the humans were paying attention to the signing of the agreement between the two races. However, he left the Starry Sky Tower alone. It was too sudden. As long as one wasn't stupid, one would suspect that there was something wrong with him. With a soft sigh, Zhuowen could only continue to stand where he was and hope that no one could see through his disguise. "Sigh, it seems that Long Wen is going to be sold. However, Long Wen is too arrogant. He actually captured the saintess of the Phoenix people. Isn't he just asking for trouble?" The hunchbacked man shook his head and sighed. Then he looked at Zhuowen and said, "Brother, which floor of the Star Tower did you enter to exchange for something? The things in this Starry Sky Pagoda should be pretty good." "I don't have a lot of points, so I can only enter the first floor. However, the things inside are indeed top-notch. It really opened my eyes. It's a pity that I don't have enough points. If I did, I would really want to exchange for everything inside." Zhuowen gave a thumbs up. The hunchbacked man grinned and said, "Of course." Everything produced by the Starry Sky Tower was of high quality. The truly good things were on the 9th floor. Unfortunately, no one has ever had the qualifications to enter the 9th level. "Oh, I'm wrong. There's one person now, and that's the current number 1 on the universal contribution list, Long Wen. It's a pity that this guy offended a foreign tribe and is now in a precarious situation. Otherwise, this guy's future would be boundless." At this point, the hunchbacked man shook his head. Zhuowen could clearly see the resentment and dissatisfaction in this man's eyes. It seemed that this guy still had some sense of justice. It's said that there are good things on the 9th floor. Brother, do you know what other things there are on the 9th floor besides the transcending heaven-grade items? Zhuowen pretended to be curious and asked, "Oh, apart from the transcending heaven-grade items, I heard from the previous generation's gatekeeper that the guy who can enter the 9th floor is an extremely amazing person and will be recognized by the Starry Sky Pagoda. However, this is just a rumor. It can't be trusted, the hunchbacked man said. Zhuowen nodded. Just as he was about to continue speaking, the 4 Tao masters at the round table in front of them had finished their discussion. The one who spoke this time was the Northern Tao master, Yao Jianyuan. Yao Jianyuan's gaze was solemn. He looked at the yang-tongued combination and said, "We agree to your request. However, there's a problem. We haven't seen Long One, so we can't hand him over right now." The yang-tongued combination smiled and said, "There's no need for the 4 Tao masters to worry about this. Muyu is the grand elder of the Phoenix people. Since Long Wen is so daring as to capture the Phoenix people's Saintess, Muyu's bloodline resonates with the Saintess bloodline. If Long Wen is within the range of your Starry Sky Pagoda, then I think Muyu will be able to find him. At that time, no one from the human race will stop us from capturing Long Wen." The 4 Tao masters looked at Muyu in surprise. After hesitating for a moment, they all nodded. Since the 4 Tao masters have agreed, Grand Elder, it's up to you now. The yang-tongued combination and the other leaders of the foreign tribes stood up. After shaking hands with the 4 Tao masters, they smiled and looked at Muyu. "Leave this to me. As long as the Saintess is hidden in Long Wen's storage world, I'll be able to sense it through her bloodline." Muyu nodded and closed her beautiful eyes. Her slender hands were in front of her chest as she made hand seals and gestured. A blood-colored magic array appeared above Muyu's head. This magic array was formed by fresh blood. The blood was very strange. It was actually burning and boiling like flames. It was very strange. Zhuowen, who was standing beside the hunchbacked man, couldn't help but narrow his eyes. This was because the instant the blood-colored magic array appeared, he noticed that the Saintess, who was imprisoned in the outside world, was acting strangely. In the outside world, the small residence on the island suddenly exploded. Waves of blood-colored energy soared into the sky. Yin Wuxia and Ghost Plume both spat out mouthfuls of blood and were sent flying out of the small residence. They fell into the lake and looked at the beautiful figure standing on the island with shock. Her entire body was wrapped in blood energy. They were cultivating outside the house when it suddenly exploded. The aftermath of the explosion pushed them away, and the Saintess who was inside the house became like this. The crisp cry of a phoenix resounded. This sound was crisp and pleasant to the ear. It seemed to penetrate everything. It passed through the lake, spread to the mountains, transcended the outside world, and directly reached the Starry Sky Tower. The hunchbacked man was immediately frightened by this crisp phoenix cry and retreated. He looked at the figure in front of him in shock. This figure was talking and laughing with him just a moment ago. What's going on? The hunchbacked man clearly didn't understand the situation. All the cultivators around the square retreated far away from the ear-piercing phoenix cry. It was as if this person was a plague. The phoenix cry became louder and louder. The sound was louder and louder, as if it would never stop. Chapter 3070, Tit for Tat. Zhuowen stood quietly on the spot as the clear and melodious cry of a phoenix continuously sounded from Zhuowen's side. It was as if there was a living phoenix hidden in Zhuowen's body. Muyu slowly lowered her slender hands as her beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen. Her expression was terrifyingly cold. "You're Long One, right?" The yang-tongued harmony asked indifferently as he stared at Zhuowen with a hint of curiosity in his eyes. The 4 Tao masters stood up, and their gazes also fell on Zhuowen. However, the 4 of them had collectively become mute. After agreeing to the yang-tongued harmony's request to hand over Long One, they had already stood on the opposite side of Long One. Now, Longwen was actually still hiding around the Starry Sky Pagoda and had personally witnessed them using him as a bargaining chip to be sold to the foreign races. They also knew that the four Tao masters had indirectly fallen out with Longwen. Zhuowen sighed softly in his heart. It seemed that he had still underestimated the Phoenix people. He had originally thought that hiding the Phoenix people's holy maiden in the outside world would be a flawless plan. Now, it seemed that the holy maiden had become a moving tracker that exposed him. His divine sense entered the outside world and saw that the holy maiden had fainted after letting out that clear and melodious cry of a phoenix. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxie were dutifully guarding the unconscious holy maiden. The yang-tongued harmony was slightly displeased when he saw that Zhuowen was silent. "Didn't you hear what I said?" Zhuowen slowly raised his head and first glanced at the four Tao masters. The four Tao lords instinctively moved their gazes away when they met Zhuowen's gaze. Zhuowen's gaze shifted slightly and fell on the yang-tongued harmony as he slowly said, "Yes, I am Longwen." Zhuowen knew that his identity had already been revealed, so there was no need to hide it anymore. Zhuowen's admission caused an uproar among the crowd. Among them, Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing's expressions changed drastically. Just as they were about to stand up, they were pulled back by the experts of their respective forces. And Xiaojin put his right hand on Yao Xiangjuan's shoulder and said in a deep voice, "Xiangjuan, don't be impulsive. It's useless even if you go there. Longwen has offended two powerful non-humankind beings, Yang Jianyunian and Mu Yu. That means he has become the enemy of the entire non-humankind army. It's useless for you to go there. You'll even implicate our Yin and Yang divine sect." Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes dimmed, and Xiaojin was right. She was like an ant compared to the Yangshi harmony and Mu Yu. Even if she rushed out, she would only be a useless cannon fodder. The situation on Jiang Qixing's side was the same. The masters of Chasing Sun Temple also knew that Jiang Qixing had a friendship with Longwen, so they stopped the impulsive Jiang Qixing in advance. Ha! As expected of the number one genius on the universal contribution list. "I like your courage." Mu Yu chuckled, but her beautiful eyes emitted a cold light. She continued, "If you hand over the Saintess now, then kowtow and apologize to the Saintess in front of us. Then come with us. Perhaps you can keep your life." Zhuowen smiled faintly, but he didn't look at Mu Yu at all. Instead, he looked around at the many humans who had remained silent. Finally, he looked at the four Tao masters and said indifferently, "Do the four Tao masters really intend to sell me to the non-humankind, and then wag your tails and fawn over them? Do you think that as long as you act like a docile hunting dog and wag your tails to the non-humankind will soften their hearts and let you go? I don't think so. The non-humankind will become greedier and greedier. After this, the non-humankind will think of ways to attack the other two camps. After the four camps are attacked and occupied, you won't even have the chance to use the Universal Pagoda to sacrifice yourselves. Then the Xianmi heavenly region will be slowly nibbled away and invaded by the non-humankind." At this point, Zhuowen's voice became a little louder, and he continued, "Now that the non-humankind has attacked you, don't you have any thoughts of resisting at all? Instead, you'd rather be a dog begging for mercy in exchange for a moment of peace?" Zhuowen's words were slightly emotional. After hearing these words, many of the human juniors in the surroundings trembled. They clenched their fists so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. Their blood surged, and they also felt that it was a humiliation to sign such an unequal agreement. These juniors all wanted to speak up and support Zhuowen, but they were all stopped by the seniors in the group. The four Tao masters' expressions weren't very good. Longwen's words had gone too far. They were directly slapping their faces. Speaking of which, the four of them didn't want to continue fighting and wanted to negotiate peace with the non-human kind. Now, Longwen had called them cowards and dogs begging for mercy. Wasn't he indirectly saying that they were dogs? Longwen, aren't you going too far with your words? Too radical? We're also doing this for the benefit of the human race. If we continue fighting, it will only harm the human race. Do you want the entire human race to be annihilated before you think it's right? The Northern Tao master, Yao Jianyuan, snorted coldly as he glanced coldly at Zhuowen. His tone became unfriendly. Longwen, you've never considered the position of the human race. You only know how to act impulsively. You're a human, and we do intend to protect you. But you're too arrogant. You actually kidnapped the holy maiden of the Phoenix people. You're in the wrong first, and we won't cover up your mistakes. You have to bear this responsibility yourself. The Western Tao master L.V. Yelyang's voice was very calm, and he seemed very calm. Zhuowen sneered coldly. So you think that selling me out is my own doing? That I'm in the wrong first? What else? The Northern Tao master, Yao Jianyuan, couldn't be bothered with Zhuowen. After saying that, he didn't say anything else. He felt that Longwen really didn't know how to conduct himself. He had thought that Longwen was a genius, but now it seemed that Longwen was really brainless. Although the four Tao masters had indeed agreed to cooperate, they wouldn't just stand by and do nothing. However, Longwen had pointed the spearhead at the four Tao masters as soon as he opened his mouth. Wasn't this directly offending the four Tao masters? Quite a number of human cultivators in the surroundings secretly shook their heads. They felt that Longwen was simply too impulsive. He actually did not know how to say anything nice and offended both sides. This time, he would probably be in for a great calamity. This kid is really arrogant to the point of no bounds. He's courting death. Senki Yin stood in front of the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sex group and sneered as he looked at Zhuowen's figure. Ever since his soul was injured by the Yama demon portrait, and he fled in panic, Senki Yin had returned to the Starry Sky Towers camp. His soul was severely injured. After returning to the Starry Sky Towers camp, he took many divine pills to recover his soul. However, his soul recovered very slowly. Due to the injury to his soul, Senki Yin's thinking speed had become very slow and sluggish. This made Senki Yin hate Zhuowen even more. Chapter 3071. Tragic second. Elder, however, Senki Yin was unwilling to give up. Zhuowen still had the Yama's ghost portrait that he wanted very much. If Zhuowen was taken away by the alien race, then he would have no chance with the Yama's ghost portrait. However, Sun Qin didn't dare to step forward to stop them. If he did, any transcending heaven lord from the other races would be able to kill him. After all, his divine soul had been seriously injured, and his strength was almost no longer comparable to an early-stage transcending heaven lord. The yang-tongued combination silently watched the conversation between Zhuowen and the four Path Masters. After the Northern Path Master ignored Zhuowen, the yang-tongued combination finally spoke. "You've finished arguing. Longwen, you can now release the saintess of the Phoenix people and come with us. Don't worry, we don't plan to take your life. We just have something to discuss with you. As long as you cooperate, your life won't be in danger." The yang-tongued combination's voice was very gentle, as if he was chatting with a friend. However, Zhuowen knew how terrifying the yang-tongued combination was. As long as he wanted to, he could immediately injure or kill Zhuowen. Even though Zhuowen's Pango's sacred body had reached the late-stage 6-star realm, he was still far from being a match for the yang-tongued combination. Zhuowen gently rubbed the Starry Sky token on his waist. He couldn't help but think of the voice on the 9th floor of the Starry Sky Pagoda. This was the only trump card he could use now. He hoped that the starry sky pagoda spirit wasn't tricking him. Seeing that Zhuowen didn't speak for a long time, the yang-tongued combination stopped and said with a displeased expression, "Longwen, did you hear what I said? Come over here now. No one can help you now. If you want to live, you have to do as I say." Muyu's beautiful eyes fell on Zhuowen. She didn't hide the killing intent in her eyes. If Zhuowen didn't agree to the yang-tongued combination, she would immediately attack. Everyone was looking at Zhuowen right now. They were anticipating how this human would reply to the sheep-tongue combination. Zhuowen slowly raised his head. His gaze was as cold as a frozen lake that had not changed for thousands of years. He said indifferently, "I refuse." The surroundings were very quiet, and what replaced it was the sound of people sucking in cold air. This Longwen really had guts. He actually dared to directly refuse in front of the Yang-tongued Union and Muyu. Did he really want to die? The Yang-Jiao duo was stunned. Soon after, he revealed a ferocious expression and said, "You refuse? Do you really want to die?" "Brother Yangzi, why are you wasting your breath on this human? I'll just capture him straight away. In any case, we've already reached an agreement with the humans." All of a sudden, a figure shot out from the group of outsiders, bringing with it scorching heat. It was like a terrifying and powerful fire tornado. It's the second elder of the Phoenix people. The humans immediately recognized the figure with the terrifying flame aura. Someone exclaimed in surprise. The Yang-tongued Union and Muyu looked at each other and withdrew their original intention to attack. They knew that with Elder Hong's strength, dealing with Longwen wouldn't be a problem. Zhuowen took a deep breath and looked at the second elder, who was rushing over. He could clearly see the ferocious look in the second elder's eyes. He knew that this old man would definitely not hold back this time, and would definitely kill him in one fell swoop. The nerves of the surrounding people tensed up. They all knew that although this second elder of the Phoenix people was also at the early stage of the heaven-reaching master realm, his cultivation base was extremely terrifying. However, they knew that the battle prowess of these two elders was extremely terrifying. They were definitely not ordinary people. Senki In, Xiang Puyu, and in Xiaojin, the three early-stage heaven-reaching master realm experts of the human race, had joined forces to deal with the second elder in the Door of Darkness. However, the result of them being suppressed had long been spread throughout the space camp. "This Longwen is done for." And Xiaojin muttered to himself, his face turning purple when he saw that it was the second elder who attacked. He recalled some unpleasant memories. Just when everyone thought that Longwen would repeatedly retreat in fear, they were stupefied to discover that Longwen took out a sign and loudly shouted, "I need you." That expression, that voice, and that action, it was as silly as it could get. But soon, everyone's expression changed. Even the expression of the second elder, who was surging with killing intent, changed. A destructive energy that made all living beings tremble began to slowly spread out from the starry sky tower. In the center of the space camp, a black thing that looked like the mouth of a cannon slowly emerged from the middle of the starry sky tower that had stood there for countless years. Boom! A beam of light suddenly shot out from the mouth of the cannon. The direction of the beam of light was actually the second elder of the Phoenix people, who was rushing towards Zhuowen. The second elder was stunned, but the moment the beam of light was about to land on him, he came back to his senses and began to retreat. At the same time, he used all the energy in his body to set up a powerful defense around him. Unfortunately, the second elder of the Phoenix people's efforts were of no use. The beam of light directly penetrated all of his defenses, converged into a single point, and finally pierced through the second elder's forehead. The second elder didn't even have time to groan before his head exploded, and his divine soul was destroyed. He became a headless corpse that fell from the sky. Zhuowen was stunned at first, but he quickly reached out with his right hand and swept the spirit ring from the second elder's hand. His Ho-E divine arrow was inside, so he naturally wouldn't let it go. Damn, this is the power of the Starry Sky Tower? Isn't this a little too awesome? After putting away the spirit ring, Zhuowen was in disbelief. The second elder of the Phoenix people was so terrifying, but he was actually killed with a single blow. No wonder the tower spirit said that the power of the Starry Sky Tower was enough to destroy a quarter of the Xianmi heavenly domain. That tower spirit said that I can only use the power of the Starry Sky Tower once. Was that one shot already enough? Zhuowen suddenly recalled what the tower spirit said to him and was shocked. Killing the second elder of the Phoenix people was indeed a pleasant surprise, but the second elder of the Phoenix people was only one of the many foreign race experts. There were many foreign race leaders in the Starry Sky camp who were even stronger than the second elder. If he could only fire one shot, then Zhuowen, still wouldn't be able to escape. I said that you can only use the power of the Starry Sky Tower once, not just once. This time, you can use the Starry Sky token in your hand to control the turrets in the Starry Sky Tower. You only have 1 hour, so make good use of this opportunity. That's right, you don't need to shout, "I need you" anymore. You only need to communicate with the Starry Sky token. The Starry Sky Tower has a total of 9 floors, and each floor has a turret. You can control and use all 9 turrets. The tower spirit's elegant voice rang out once again, echoing in Zhuowen's mind. Zhuowen's face lit up with joy. If he had 1 hour, he could use the turrets in the Starry Sky Tower to expel these foreign invaders. Thinking of this, Zhuowen suddenly jumped back and instantly reached the top of the Starry Sky Tower. Chapter 3072. Fort, the Starry Sky Tower's fort. Longwen can actually control the Starry Sky Tower's fort. How is that possible? The Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua, shouted excitedly. The other 3 Tao Lords also came back to their senses, and their eyes were filled with shock. Everyone knew that the Starry Sky Tower's energy was terrifyingly powerful, but no one could control the Starry Sky Tower's energy. Even the 4 Tao Lords could only unlock the Starry Sky Tower's seal and release all the energy within the Starry Sky Tower to cause an indiscriminate explosion to destroy the foreign races. However, it was impossible to completely control the Starry Sky Tower's energy. At the very least, the 4 Tao Lords couldn't do it. They weren't even qualified to use the Starry Sky Tower's fort. But now, Longwen had actually mobilized the cannons and was even able to use them to attack. Was the world going to change? Since when did the Starry Sky Tower become so obedient? Zhuowen stood at the top of the Starry Sky Tower, and his gaze fell on the eastern and northern camps. Both camps were filled with the foreign race's army. Zhuowen licked his lips, and with a thought, the bottom 3 levels of fort were aimed at the eastern camp, the middle 3 levels of fort were aimed at the northern camp, and the top 3 levels of fort were controlled by Zhuowen. They were aimed at the leaders of the foreign races who were not far away from the Starry Sky Tower. Oh no, this guy is going to attack the foreign race's army. The pupils of the Yangjian, he shrank. Before he could finish speaking, 6 rays of light shot out from the 6 forts aimed at the eastern and northern camps. They tore through the void and shot into the 2 camps. The rays of light were too terrifying, and they could pierce through anything. Anything that was hit by the rays of light was basically annihilated into nothingness. The rays of light were like the rays of death. Everywhere they passed, everything was turned into ruins and death. The foreign races in the 2 camps screamed incessantly. None of them were lucky enough to survive after being hit by the rays of light. They were basically annihilated into dust. Run! Run! Amidst the endless screams, the foreign race's army panicked, and they started to flee towards the starry sky outside. They knew that if they continued to stay here, they would definitely die. There was still a chance of survival if they escaped. The Yangjian ensemble's face instantly turned gloomy. He stared at the figure at the top of the Universal Tower. He knew that he had to stop this person. Otherwise, their foreign race army would be doomed. Thinking of this, the Yang-tongued combination stomped its right leg and charged toward Zhuowen as if it had teleported. He was confident that he wasn't too far away from the Universal Tower. With his speed, he would be able to reach the top of the Universal Tower in the blink of an eye. Then, he would be able to capture this human. But soon, a strong sense of crisis rose in his mind. Immediately, the 3 turrets on the upper 3 floors of the Starry Sky Tower aimed in the direction of the Yangshi combined staff and shot out 3 terrifying beams of light. The expression of the Yangshi combination changed drastically. Both of his feet stomped in the air and instantly changed several tens of positions in the air, leaving behind many illusory shadows. However, the beam of light seemed to have seen through the Yangshi duo's escape route. It actually chased after the Yangshi duo. The Yangshi duo had no choice but to continuously retreat. In the end, he retreated to his original position. At the same time, 1/3 of the Yangshi duo's abdomen had disappeared. Obviously, when the Yangshi duo was dodging, he must have been hit by one of the beams of light. That was why 1/3 of the flesh on his abdomen had disappeared into nothingness. The Yangshi duo's face turned ugly. He realized that his energy could not circulate on its own in the area that was hit by the beam of light. Furthermore, the wound could not heal on its own. In other words, the recovery was very slow. The Yangshi duo found it unbelievable. He was from the witch race and had a strong physical body. Among the countless races in the primitive heaven realm, he could be considered one of the best. Usually, such an injury could be healed in the blink of an eye. But now, the wound could not heal. He knew that it was because of the beam of light from the Universal Tower. The energy of the beam of light was not ordinary. It could actually suppress the powerful recovery of his physical body. What? Didn't you want to capture me just now? Why aren't you coming now? Zhuowen stood on the top of the Starry Sky Tower, looking down at countless human beings and non-humankind beings in the 4 Starry Sky campsites. He stared at the Yang-tongued Union, and his voice was neither fast nor slow, but it was so soul-stirring, like a drum beating in everyone's hearts. The Yangshi duo clutched the wound on his abdomen. His eyes were filled with shock and uncertainty. He never thought that the situation would turn around. This damned Longwen actually knew how to use the energy of the Universal Tower. How did he do it? Since you're not coming, I'll do it. Zhuowen grinned. His smile was so cold that it did not contain any warmth. After Zhuowen finished speaking, 3 beams of light shot out from the 3 levels of the Universal Tower towards the Yangshi duo's side. There were a total of 4 foreign race leaders and a group of foreign race elites on the Yangshi duo's side. When Zhuowen controlled the Universal Tower to attack them, these foreign race leaders immediately retreated. They ran much faster than the Yangshi duo and did not have any awareness of facing the attack head-on. Mu Yu was also retreating. Her eyes were filled with anger and fear. The 2 leaders of the Phoenix people were actually killed just like that. This was a great loss to the Phoenix people. In addition, even the hope of the Phoenix people, the saintess of the Phoenix people, was in the hands of this damned Longwen. Now, facing Longwen, she could only keep retreating. This made Mu Yu so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood. No matter how gloomy she felt, she really didn't dare to rush up. The Universal Star Tower's cannons were too terrifying. She could smell the threat of death from the cannons. If she rushed up, it would be the same as courting death. Brother Yangshi, what should we do now? Twilight Rain sent a voice transmission to the sheep and Tongue Harmony, who was also dodging the attacks as she dodged the attacks. The Yangshi duo's face was gloomy. His eyes were filled with unwillingness as he said, "Retreat." Muyu was startled, but when she saw the non-humankind army in the east and north camps running away, her face was filled with defeat. The Yangshi duo's suggestion was indeed the wisest one. If they did not retreat now, the foreign race would suffer even greater losses. "Let's retreat." Muyu nodded and started to retreat. Regardless of whether it was the Yangzhou Harmonious Union, Muyu, or the other two foreign race leaders, they were all transcending heaven masters. With the four of them working together, they were indeed able to block the attacks of the three rays of light and began to retreat in an orderly manner. Four Tao Masters, how long are you planning to watch this show? Chapter 3073. Fleeing in Panic. Longwen, is this how you speak to a Tao Lord? The Northern Tao Lord, Yao Jianyuan, said coldly. However, the Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua, took a step forward and rushed toward the Yang-tongued combination. At the same time, he transmitted his voice to Zhuowen. "Longwen, thank you for this. Also, we four Tao Lords were in the wrong previously. After this is over, I will do my best to compensate you." After speaking, Tan Xinghua rushed toward the Yang-tongued combination and took out the meteor whip. The meteor whip's surface was covered in lightning, and it was like an ancient lightning snake. Endless lightning whistled as it rushed toward the Yang-tongued combination. "Tan Xinghua, you are courting death. You were severely injured by me previously, and you still dare to fight me with your severely injured body. You are courting death." Seeing Tan Xinghua's meteor-long whip, killing intent burst out from the Yang-tongued Union's eyes. He clenched his right hand into the air, and a huge axe appeared in his palm. He fiercely knocked the meteor-long whip to one side. The Yang-tongued combination stepped forward with his right foot, and the huge axe in his hand followed his momentum and slammed toward Tan Xinghua. The powerful force seemed to have broken the rules of the heavenly Tao. The entire space was as fragile as paper in front of the huge axe's powerful force. Tan Xinghua's expression changed drastically. He was already severely injured, and even at his peak, he might not be able to defeat the Yang-tongued combination, let alone now. Tan Xinghua could only swing his right arm fiercely when he saw the gigantic axe coming towards him. The meteor whip in his palm was like a tornado. It was placed horizontally in front of him and began to spin unceasingly. The speed was extremely fast, and the lightning surged and exploded. Bang! Unfortunately, the meteor whip only managed to block for a few breaths of time before it was pushed to the side. Tan Xinghua spat out a mouthful of blood and exposed a flaw in his chest. Die! The Yang-tongue combination's face was ferocious. The huge axe in his hand cut through the air like water and slammed toward the flaw in Tan Xinghua's chest. The Yang-tongue combination's attack was too terrifying. If it hit Tan Xinghua, he would definitely die. Whoosh! A ray of light suddenly swept over and blasted on top of the gigantic axe. The terrifying force caused the Yangzhou to tremble and involuntarily retreat. The giant axe was also sent flying by the ray of light. It landed far away and floated in the air, its surface dim. Whoosh! Whoosh! Another two rays of light shot over, one from the front and one from the back, sandwiching the harmonious sheep and tongue in the middle. A look of panic appeared on his face as he stomped his feet repeatedly in the air. His entire body turned into a series of afterimages as he escaped from the encirclement of the two rays of light. However, the moment he escaped, a third beam of light suddenly pierced through. This beam of light was very familiar to him. It was the same beam of light that had sent his giant axe flying. The ray of light had suddenly appeared at this moment and landed on the path that he was about to leave. At this moment, there was simply no way to dodge the combination of the goat and the tongue. He activated all the energy in his body and circulated it around his body, using this to resist the ray of light. Bang! The ray of light landed on the body of the sheep and tongue, and an extremely ear-piercing muffled sound erupted. The Yangjiao crossed his hands in front of him, and all the energy in his body condensed on his hands, forming a powerful defense. However, at this moment, violent ripples appeared on the energy defense, as if countless stones had fallen on the surface of water. The ripples were very dense and very violent. The Yangjiao's face was pale and bloodless. His body trembled even more violently, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He began to retreat continuously. The pressure that the ray of light gave him was too great, and he could not hold on any longer. At the top of the starry sky tower, Zhuowen immediately saw the Yangjiao, who was still struggling to hold on. With a thought, the other two turrets on the upper level suddenly gathered together and aimed at the Yangjiao. Two dazzling rays of light burst out at the same time, and the target was the Yangjiao, who was still struggling to hold on. Damn! The Yangjiao naturally saw the two rays of light that swept over again. His pupils shrank to the size of needles, and he could not help but curse. He had already resisted one of the turret's rays of light to the brink of death, and now there were two equally terrifying rays of light blasting over. This was simply asking him to die. The Yangjiao subconsciously wanted to escape, but he could not. The ray of light in front of him was firmly suppressing him, making him unable to move at all. In the end, the two rays of light approached and landed in front of the Yangjiao. The surface of the Yangjiao's defense rippled even more violently. In the end, the ripples disappeared, and the defense shattered. The three terrifying rays of light pressed forward and directly passed through the Yangjiao's chest. The terrifying energy exploded in front of the Yangjiao, and the Yangjiao did not even have the chance to make a sound before it was blasted into smithereens. The moment the turrets killed the Yangjiao, Zhuowen frowned slightly. He felt that something was wrong. At the place where the Yangjiao died, a ray of blood-red light suddenly burst out. The blood-red light fled toward the void outside the starry sky tower at an extremely fast speed. Zhuowen immediately sensed the escaping blood-red light and immediately controlled one of the turrets to aim at the blood-red light, firing a terrifying ray of light. Buzz, buzz, buzz. However, the blood-red light was very agile and was extremely fast. Before the ray of light hit it, it had already dodged and continued to flee into the depths of the void. Soon, it disappeared without a trace. As expected of the war god of the sorcerer tribe, he actually has such a trump card to escape. Zhuowen's face was slightly gloomy. He no longer cared about the Yangjiao, as he knew that he no longer had the ability to stop the Yangjiao. Mu Yu and the other foreign race leaders were still retreating. After the Yangjiao was forced to flee, they retreated even faster. Some of them even turned around and fled for their lives. Unfortunately, Zhuowen did not intend to let these foreign race leaders off so easily. Zhuowen controlled the 9 turrets of the Starry Sky Tower. The foreign race army in the east and the north of the Starry Sky camp had basically been annihilated by the turrets. Most of the foreign race troops were left in the 2 camps. As for the foreign race troops who were still alive, there were not many of them left. Moreover, Zhuowen also knew that if he wanted to hurt the foreign race, he would have to kill a few of their leaders. As the saying went, to catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. When the 9 turrets of the Starry Sky Tower finally aimed at Mu Yu and the other foreign race leaders, their bodies immediately stiffened, and their eyes were filled with fear. But soon, these foreign race leaders did not care about anything else. They took out their flying divine weapons and quickly fled. 3 turrets had almost annihilated the Yangjiao. Now that 9 turrets were firing at the same time, they were on the verge of being wiped out. If they did not leave now, when would they leave? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 9 turrets fired 9 rays of light at the same time. These 9 rays of light were like dragons of death. They shot out in a roundabout way and instantly hit several foreign race elites. Chapter 3074. Starry Sky Pagoda, Master Muyu, and the other 2 mid-stage sky-piercing realm foreign race leaders did not even turn their heads as they fled. Now was not the time to care about these foreign race elites. If they were a step late, they would follow in the footsteps of the sheep-tongue combination technique. Furthermore, they did not have a powerful escape technique like the sheep-tongue combination technique. The final outcome was likely to be death. Rays of light shot out one after another, and the foreign race elites fell one after another. Muyu and the other 2 foreign race leaders only cared about fleeing in front. The fear in their hearts grew stronger and stronger. When all the non-humankind elites behind the 3 of them died, the sense of crisis in their hearts reached the most intense moment. Then they felt that the 9 beams of light were chasing after them, following behind them like poisonous snakes hiding in the dark, ready to hunt. At this moment, they felt that the interstellar camp was so long as if there was no end to it. It was as if they could not leave this place at all. Ah! Suddenly, a miserable cry rang out behind Muyu. At the very back was the Black Tiger race leader. At this moment, he was shot by the cannon, and his entire body was covered in white light. Bang! 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 The other 8 rays of light followed closely behind and merged into the Black Tiger race leader's body. The Black Tiger race leader only had time to let out a miserable cry before he was blasted into pieces by the rays of light. He could not be more dead. In front of the Black Tiger race leader was the Dragon race leader. When the Dragon race leader saw the Black Tiger race leader die, just like that, he was scared out of his wits. He did not hesitate to burn his blood essence to escape. Muyu had already burned her blood essence. Behind her, a pair of incomparably huge blood-red wings spread open. With a light flap, Muyu disappeared from the spot like a gust of wind. Another 9 rays of light shot out. These rays of light were too fast, almost reaching the speed of light. Even though the Dragon race leader burned his blood essence and revealed his true body, he was still unable to dodge the 9 rays of light. The 9 rays of light pierced through him, and with a roar, his huge dragon body exploded, turning into a mist of blood. Muyu burned her blood essence crazily. Her speed rose to the extreme, and she instantly rushed out of the interstellar camp. However, she did not dare to stay for too long. She continued to crazily burn her essence blood. After a few flashes, her figure completely disappeared. Zhuowen stood at the top of the tower and watched Sunset Rain's figure disappear. Although he felt that it was a pity, he also felt relieved. An hour passed by very quickly, and it was almost time for him to finish his bombardment. If the Yangjiao Union, Muyu, and the others could hold on for a little longer, he might not be able to use the cannons of the Starry Sky Tower anymore. If they found out that something was amiss, he would be in deep trouble. Looking at the cannons on the surface of the Starry Sky Tower, automatically retracting back into the tower, Zhuowen's eyes remained calm as he slowly jumped down from the top of the tower. At this moment, all the human cultivators in the Starry Sky Tower stared blankly at this scene. This fellow was a little too surprising, wasn't he? He had thought that once the draconic runes were discovered, he would be dead for sure. However, the outcome seemed to be a joke to everyone. Longwen had suddenly grasped the power of the Starry Sky Tower and mobilized the turrets in the tower. Then, with the help of the turrets, he had defeated a group of aggressive draconic runes that had come right in front of the human race. Even the Yangjiao Union, the war god of the sorcerer tribe, had been beaten to a pulp by the turrets and had almost died. The four Tao Lords were all dumbfounded. The draconic runes that had troubled the human race to the extreme had been dealt with by this person just like that. This had completely overturned their understanding of the world, and they felt that this world was too crazy. Senior Long, thank you for helping me reclaim the lost land. Please accept a bow from Tan Xinghua. Under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, the Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua, came before Zhuowen and bowed very seriously with a respectful look in his eyes. Heavens, this world was too crazy. Tan Xinghua was one of the four Tao Lords of the astral battlefield and a mid-stage Tao Lord. Now he was bowing down to an eternal overlord cultivator and calling him senior. What kind of scene was this? However, no one present felt that this was out of place. Although the cultivation of this cultivator, named Long, when was very low and even insignificant, this guy was able to use the energy of the astral tower. This was something that not even the four Tao Lords were qualified to do. Moreover, this person had relied on the astral tower's energy to completely defeat the draconic runes and kill two draconic leaders. This was a feat that not even the four Tao Lords had accomplished. The other three Tao Lords also came back to their senses and hurriedly walked before Zhuowen and bowed respectfully. Although they felt that it was unreal, Longwen had indeed helped the human race defeat the draconic runes. It could be said that Longwen was a great contributor to the human race. The northern Tao Lord followed the other Tao Lords and bowed to Zhuowen, but his gaze was very complicated. Not long ago, he had not taken Zhuowen seriously at all. Now, the roles had been reversed, and he had to bow to this person as a junior. It had to be said that the affairs of the world were unpredictable. Zhuowen couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the four Tao Lords. He knew that they were respectful to him, mainly because he could use the astral tower's energy. If the four Tao Lords knew that he could only use the astral tower's energy once, they probably wouldn't be so respectful to him. They might even not care about him at all. Any kind of respect was based on one's strength and status. Zhuowen's cultivation wasn't high, but he could control the astral tower's energy and indirectly displayed his strength. Therefore, he won the respect of the four Tao Lords and the other humans. However, Zhuowen knew that this kind of respect wouldn't last long. After all, the astral tower was just an external force that could only be used once. Senior Long, since you can control the astral tower's energy, then you should be the tower master. If Senior Long doesn't mind, the four of us are willing to acknowledge you as the tower master. We're willing to obey all your orders. Tan Xinghua was very proactive. He stood in front of Zhuowen and bowed deeply to Zhuowen. As for the other three Tao Lords, besides Yao Jianyuan, who was frowning, the other two revealed expressions of agreement. Yes, Brother Tan is right. Senior Long, since you can control the astral tower's energy, you're more qualified than the four of us to command the astral battlefield. If you become the tower master, we're willing to obey your orders. Mei Zian, the southern Tao Lord, interrupted. LV Yelyang, the western Tao Lord, nodded repeatedly. However, Yao Jianyuan, the northern Tao Lord, didn't feel very comfortable. However, when he saw that the other three Tao Lords seemed to agree, he could only nod against his will. Chapter 3075. Refusal. The Starry Sky Pagoda Master seemed to be very impressive on the surface, but Zhuowen knew that he was just a target for the limelight during this important period. If the foreign race army attacked again, then he would have to take the lead and charge at the front for the four Tao Masters and the rest of the human race. If he wasn't strong enough, then he would be the first cannon fodder to be destroyed. If he could still use the Starry Sky Pagoda's energy, then this would naturally be a small matter. However, the problem was that he no longer had the qualifications to use the Starry Sky Pagoda's energy. If there wasn't something wrong with his brain, then he wouldn't have become the Starry Sky Pagoda Master. This was definitely looking for trouble. Moreover, he had other things to do. How could he have the time to waste on the Starry Sky Pagoda? It was even more impossible for him to foolishly stay in the Starry Sky Pagoda as some bullshit pagoda master. Tan Xinghua looked at Zhuowen cautiously, afraid that Zhuowen would refuse. As Tan Xinghua expected, Zhuowen really did refuse. Moreover, it was a stern refusal. Senior Long, why is that? You can control the Starry Sky Pagoda's energy, so you are the hope of the human race. With you around, the foreign race army will be beaten to a pulp no matter how big they are. You will become the true savior of the human race. Tan Xinghua hurriedly said. Zhuowen rolled his eyes and said helplessly, I have very important things to do. I really don't have the time to be the pagoda master. With that, Zhuowen walked straight towards the Sun-Chasing Temple's team. The representative of the Sun-Chasing Temple's team was called Kong Xingyu. He was an elder of the Sun-Chasing Temple and an early-stage creator realm expert. He was the one who had stopped the impulsive Jiang Qixing and prevented him from throwing his life away. However, Kong Xingyu really wanted to slap himself now. If he had known that Zhuowen actually knew how to use the Starry Sky Pagoda's energy, he wouldn't have stopped Jiang Qixing from standing up for Longwen. Now that he saw Longwen walking towards him, Kong Xingyu wasn't happy. Instead, he was afraid. He was afraid that Longwen would blame him for stopping Jiang Qixing. Of course, Kong Xingyu was overthinking things. Zhuowen walked to the front of the group and greeted Jiang Qixing warmly. Then, Zhuowen's eyes fell on Kong Xingyu. Kong Xingyu reluctantly smiled, but his smile was very unnatural. He had to bite the bullet and said, Senior Long, may I know why you have come to our team? Zhuowen was a little speechless. Now, everyone was addressing him as Senior Long. On the surface, his cultivation base was only that of an eternal overlord. This made him feel strange. Brother Jiang and I are good friends. Today, I mainly want to go to your Zhuai Ri temple for a stroll. Also, I heard that your Sun-Chasing Temple has a Danxia Qingyang Red, right? I wonder if I can take a look around. Zhuowen asked with a smile. Kong Xingyu saw that Zhuowen didn't come here to find trouble, so he let out a sigh of relief in his heart. Then he enthusiastically patted his chest and said, If Senior Long wants to come to our Sun-Chasing Temple, then we will welcome you. As for the Danxia Qingyang Red, our Sun-Chasing Temple does have it, but at this point, Kong Xingyu also realized that Longwen's purpose of going to their Sun-Chasing Temple should be the Danxia Qingyang Red. But what? Zhuowen asked. It's just that the Danxia Qingyang Red has already withered. I'm afraid it's about to die. Senior Long, if you go to visit it, you will only see a withered Danxia Qingyang Red. Kong Xingyu shook his head and said, helplessly, It's okay. I just want to go to your Sun-Chasing Temple to see the Danxia Qingyang Red. Even if it's withered, I still want to see it. Why? Am I not welcome? Zhuowen smiled faintly, not minding it. Kong Xingyu repeatedly said, Senior Long, we are honored by your presence. I can't be more excited. May I know when Senior Long plans to come to our sect? After I get rid of one person, I will immediately go to the Sun-Chasing Temple with you. Zhuowen smiled slightly. When Kong Xingyu was about to ask Zhuowen who he was going to get rid of, Zhuowen had already jumped high into the sky. His eyes were cold as he shouted in a deep voice, Senki-in, get out here. Zhuowen's voice resounded throughout the starry sky tower, like thunder. For a moment, everyone was stunned. Of course, they knew Senki-in. He was the sect leader of the 10 Extremes In Corps sect, an expert at the initial stage of the sky-reaching master. Longwen asked Senki-in to get out the moment he opened his mouth. Was there any conflict between the two? Senki In, who was standing in the team of the 10 Extremes In Corp sect, looked gloomy but did not do anything. When everyone's gazes landed on him, he clenched his fists so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. Soon after, he coldly snorted and said, "Long One, are you done yet? If you continue to challenge me, don't blame me for revealing your secret." Zhuowen sneered. He knew what Senki Yin's secret was. It was about his real name and the Yama demon portrait. However, Zhuowen was not afraid. Now that everyone knew that he could use the Starry Sky Tower's energy, no one would dare to make a move against him within the Starry Sky Tower. Even the 4 Tao Masters would not dare to do anything to him. Zhuowen took out the Hou-Yi Divine Bow and Hou-Yi Divine Arrow again and pulled the bowstring to a full moon. A terrifying killing intent instantly spread throughout the Starry Sky Tower. Senki Yin's pupils shrank. He started to retreat faster and faster. Although the Hou-Yi Divine Arrow was terrifying, it was not enough to kill him. His main fear was still the Starry Sky Tower. Zhuowen was too strange. He could actually use the Starry Sky Tower's energy. If the cannon from before had fired at him, he would have died, without a doubt. When he thought of this, Senki Yin's entire body trembled in fear. He rapidly retreated faster and faster. In the end, he directly fled towards the passage leading to the Xianmi heavenly region. Unfortunately, before Senki In could escape to the entrance, he was blocked by a terrifying gust of wind. Then Senki In saw a huge fist whizzing towards him. It grew bigger and bigger in his eyes. Eventually, it smashed into his face. Puchi! Senki In spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body flew backwards and landed heavily on the ground. He looked at the figure blocking the entrance in disbelief. This figure was none other than the Eastern Tao Master, Tan Xinghua. Zhuowen was not surprised that Tan Xinghua would make a move. Tan Xinghua seemed to be a person who knew how to repay kindness. Previously, Tan Xinghua used the Starry Sky Tower to save his life. Zhuowen owed Zhuowen a favor. Now that Zhuowen and Senki In had a feud, Tan Xinghua could use this opportunity to block Senki In and repay the favor he owed Zhuowen. Whoosh! The Hou-Yi Divine Arrow left the bowstring and flew towards Senki In. It carried a monstrous killing intent and an unyielding will. Senki Yin's face was gloomy. He no longer tried to escape. Instead, he began to mobilize all the energy in his body, intending to block this divine arrow. Bang! 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 The divine arrow directly pierced through Senqin's many defenses and pierced through his chest, bringing with it a mournful stream of blood that splashed out in all directions. Zhuowen waved his hand and retrieved the Hou-Yi Divine Arrow. Once again, he knocked the divine arrow on the divine bow and pulled it to a full moon. Senki In kept coughing out blood. He stood up and stared at the divine arrow that was pulled to a full moon by Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with fear. Chapter 3076. Return Swish. The Hou-Yi God's arrow left the bowstring and shot towards Senki In with monstrous killing intent and an unyielding will. Senki Yin's face sank. He no longer attempted to flee. Instead, he began to circulate all the energy in his body in an attempt to block the incoming arrow. Bang! 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 The divine arrow directly pierced through Senqin's many defenses and pierced through his chest, bringing with it a mournful stream of blood that splashed out in all directions. Zhuowen waved his hand and retrieved Hou-Yi's divine arrow. Once again, he knocked the divine arrow on the divine bow and pulled the string to a full moon. Senki In constantly coughed up blood. He stood up and stared fixedly at the arrow that Zhuowen had drawn to a full moon. His eyes were filled with fear. His soul had still not recovered from the attack of the Yama demon portrait. Otherwise, he would not have been injured so easily by the Hou-Yi God's arrow. Another divine arrow soared through the sky, bringing with it an unbelievably terrifying killing intent. Senki In was already heavily injured. The arrow was extremely fast, so he was only able to avoid being hit in the vitals. The arrow pierced through his shoulder blade and nailed him to the ground. The terrifying killing intent from the arrow swept into Senki Yin's body like a storm, causing Senki In to vomit blood again. He was as pale as a patient on the verge of death. Senki In roared out. The arrow that had nailed him to the shoulder blade was immediately knocked away. Senki In was basically covered in blood. His eyes were bloodshot, making him look extremely terrifying. With a wave of his hand, Zhuowen grabbed the Ho-I god's arrow once more. He knocked it on the bowstring and drew it again. Senki In hurriedly retreated. His eyes were filled with fear when he saw that Zhuowen was actually planning to shoot a third arrow. 1 or 2 shots of Ho-Yi's divine arrows wouldn't be able to kill him, but 5, 6, or even more times, he really wouldn't be able to withstand them and would be killed by them in the end. Zhuowen, you killed a disciple of my In-Corpse sect and stole the Yama's demon portrait that I worked so hard to obtain. You even obtained the inheritance of the ancestral shaman Gong Gong. You've already gotten everything you wanted, and now you still want to silence me. Senki In roared loudly. Soon after, a bloody mist erupted from his body, making him look extremely ferocious and terrifying. Whoosh! Zhuowen shot out another Ho-I mystical arrow. This mystical arrow carried an even sharper killing intent as it shot into the blood mist. As the blood mist dissipated, Zhuowen found that Senki In was gone. The divine arrow was stuck in the hard ground. It's the blood shadow evasion technique. This is Senki Yin's strongest escape technique. He sacrificed his body and teleported back to the blood pool that was set up beforehand. However, the side effects are huge. After using this technique, Senki Yin's cultivation will drop drastically. I'm afraid he will no longer be the master of Skirich. Tan Xinghua flew to a place not far from Zhuowen. Looking at the blood mist left by Senki In, he explained softly. Zhuowen put away the Ho-I mystical arrow and landed on the ground. He cupped his hands and thanked Tan Xinghua. Thank you for your help just now, Master Tan. Tan Xinghua hurriedly returned the gesture. The person in front of him was a ruthless person who could use the energy of the Starry Sky Pagoda. Although his cultivation and strength were far inferior to his, as long as this guy used the Starry Sky Pagoda's cannons, he could easily get rid of him. Not to mention that Zhuowen had saved his life, and he still owed Zhuowen a favor. This favor had to be returned. Senior Long, do you really not want to become the Starry Sky Pagoda Master? As long as you are willing to accept, I, Tan Xinghua, will be the first to support you. Tan Xinghua patted his chest and said. Zhuowen waved his hand and politely refused Tan Xinghua's good intentions. He walked straight to the sun-chasing temple team and said to Jiang Qixing, "And Kong Xingyu, let's go now." Kong Xingyu and Jiang Qixing naturally didn't object. Zhuowen was Jiang Qixing's friend. Moreover, it was Jiang Qixing who mentioned the red sun pill to Zhuowen. As for Kong Xingyu, in his heart, Zhuowen was a powerful expert. Naturally, he was eager to have a good relationship with such an expert. He would not object to it. Before leaving the Starry Sky battlefield, Zhuowen said goodbye to Yao Xiangjuan of the Yin and Yang Divine Sect team. What amused Zhuowen was that when Zhuowen said goodbye to Yao Xiangjuan, the sect master of the Yin and Yang Divine Sect, and Xiaojin kept winking at Yao Xiangjuan, hinting at something, Zhuowen didn't mind. After saying goodbye to Yao Xiangjuan, he followed Kong Xingyu and the others into the eastern Starry Sky camp. They went through the tunnel and returned to the host territory. Zhuowen wasn't worried about Yao Xiangjuan, although Yi Hanfei, the sect master of the Yin and Yang divine sect, wasn't a good person. He had already dealt with him. The sect master of the Yin and Yang divine sect, and Xiaojin was a good person. With Yao Xiangjuan's talent, she would definitely be valued by Xiaojin. She would definitely shine in the future. Looking at Zhuowen's disappearing back, Tan Xinghua's eyes dimmed, and he sighed softly. What a pity! Senior Long is qualified to use the Starry Sky Pagoda's fort. He is most suitable to become the pagoda master and lead the Starry Sky battlefield. Sigh. The other 3 Dao masters came to Tan Xinghua's side and also felt that it was a pity. However, the northern Dao master, Yao Jianyuan, said with some doubts, if Longwen used the Starry Sky Pagoda's fort, he could have completely eliminated Senki Yin. However, he didn't use it and let Senki Yin escape in the end. Don't you think it's suspicious? Mei Zian and LV Yelyang's eyes flickered. Both of them had the same doubts as Yao Jianyuan. Tan Xinghua said in a deep voice, Old Yao, I know that you are somewhat dissatisfied with Senior Long. However, I think it's best if you don't show it. Senior Long almost eliminated experts like the Yangjian Union and Mu Yu. Don't tell me that you think you are stronger than the Yangjian Union and Mu Yu. Also, the reason why Senior Long didn't use the fort was because he didn't want to use the Starry Sky Pagoda to deal with his own kind. This thing is only used to deal with foreign races. Moreover, the fort is too powerful. Once it is activated, it will cause large-scale destruction. At that time, your southern and western cosmic camps will be destroyed. Senior Long is taking care of us outsiders. You still not understand? After Tan Xinghua finished speaking, his gaze towards Longwen became even more respectful. In his heart, Longwen was simply a virtuous saint. Yao Jianyuan, Mei Zian, and LV Yelyang heard this, and their eyes were filled with respect. Obviously, they also agreed with Tan Xinghua's explanation. If Zhuowen had been there and heard Tan Xinghua's words, he would have definitely slapped the table and praised him. Old Tan's imagination is really what I want. Not bad, not bad. He has the potential to be my lackey. In the host region, in the depths of the 10 Absolutes in Corp's Sex secret chamber, there was a square blood pool that was dozens of square meters wide. This pool of blood was like boiling water, constantly boiling and rolling. The bright red blood jumped in midair, like a rose blooming in the air, bright and dazzling. Chapter 3077. Cut off as the blood pool continued to decrease, that thing continued to rise. The thing that rose from the bottom of the pool also became clearer. It was a middle-aged man in a blood-red robe. His eyes were closed, and his face was pale, like a vampire that had just woken up. Suddenly, the middle-aged man opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he crawled out of the blood pool. His movements were somewhat stiff, like a baby that had just learned how to walk. I'm really not used to this new body. It's so stiff. I can't move freely at all. After the middle-aged man crawled out of the blood pool, he sat on a stone chair. His eyes were filled with hatred as he said, hatefully, damned Zhuowen. If I don't take revenge, I, Senki Yin, will change my surname to yours. He actually forced me to use the blood shadow escape technique. My realm has already fallen from the early stage of the Master of Heaven Ascension to the Master of Creation. That damned bastard. This person was Senki Yin. He had been forced by Zhuowen to use the blood shadow escape technique in the Starry Sky Tower. He had paid the price of a shattered body and a drop in cultivation to be reborn in the blood pool. I must first seal the sect. Once my cultivation recovers, I'll make that Zhuowen die a horrible death. Senki Yin's sinister voice was filled with hatred. After he had mostly recovered, he stood up and walked to the door of the secret chamber. He opened the door and saw that behind it was an even larger secret chamber. There was an even larger blood pool in the secret chamber. In the center of the blood pool was a blood-red lotus platform. On the lotus platform, a figure was sitting cross-legged, quietly like a boulder. This was a rather young man. His upper body was bare, revealing his robust and muscular body. What was even more peculiar was that there was a golden vertical eye between the young man's eyebrows. The vertical eye emitted a golden light and revealed a mysterious aura. The young man sat upright on the blood-red lotus platform. His breathing was even. Waves of blood chi intertwined in the blood pool like living blood pythons. They fought to be the first to burrow into the young man's body. As he continued to absorb the blood chi, the aura of the young man grew stronger and stronger, like a beating heart. Sun Qin silently stared at the young man in front of him, and his eyes flashed as he muttered to himself, "I still haven't seen through this Sakra's constitution, but his cultivation speed is so fast, and with the help of the energy from my blood pool, his cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds. He has already stepped into the third step of the Tao confirmation stage, the God of creation stage." Senki Yin's eyes were filled with shock. He remembered that before he had left the 10 Extremities Een Corps sect for the Starry Sky battlefield, Sakyamuna's cultivation had only been at the early stage Eternal Lord realm. Now that he had returned, Sakyamuni had actually broken through. This speed was just too fast. Besides that, Senki Een sensed that Sakyamuna's ancestral Tao root was extremely formidable, and it was even more terrifying than an ordinary heaven-rank ancestral Tao root. So, his ability to cultivate so quickly was probably related to the top-grade ancestral Tao root within his body. Speaking of which, Senki Een was rather looking forward to Sakyamuni. No matter if it was his disposition or natural talent, Sakyamuni was much stronger than Ghost Plume. Sakyamuna's current cultivation had even surpassed Ghost Plume's. Even though he didn't know if Ghost Plume was still alive because of Zhuowen, Senki Een didn't care about Ghost Plume anymore. Instead, he intended to nurture Sakyamuni into the successor of the 10 Extremities Een Corps sect. Sakyamuni seemed to have sensed that someone had entered, and he stopped absorbing the blood chi from the blood pond and slowly opened his eyes. His pupils were dark gold in color, and they looked very fierce and cold. He stood up and saw Senki Een at the door. He strode out, flashed out of the blood pond, and arrived before Senki Een. He cupped his hands respectfully and said, "Sect Master, when did you return? Why didn't you inform me in advance?" Senki Yin's expression was a little unnatural. He couldn't possibly say that he was almost beaten to death and had to use the blood shadow escape technique to escape. The matter in the star battlefield is over. I just came back and saw that you were still cultivating, so I didn't want to disturb you. All right, I won't disturb your cultivation. I'll take my leave first. Sun Qin waved his hand and said before leaving the secret chamber. Sakyamuni silently looked at Senki Yin's back. His eyes slowly narrowed, and he was slightly puzzled. The moment he opened his eyes, he could see that Senki Yin's aura was much weaker than before, as if he had suffered a serious injury. Sakyamuni guessed that Senki Een might have encountered some unforeseen circumstances in the star battlefield, but he didn't say much. Zhuowen followed Kong Xingyu's team. After leaving the star battlefield, he went directly to the sun-chasing temple. He planned to go to the primitive heavenly realm after finishing the Danxia Qingyang Red in the sun-chasing temple. He was really worried about Mu Qinshue's safety. Although the saintess of the Phoenix people had repeatedly assured him that Mu Qinshue's life was not in danger, he knew that Mu Qinshue's life must be very difficult among the Phoenix people, as her bloodline had been taken away. As for the Danxia Qingyang Red, it was one of the 6 divine medicines used to refine the 6 Desires spirit-condensing pill. It was Moyan Wushang's life-saving straw, so he naturally wouldn't leave it behind. Zhuowen sat cross-legged in a quiet room and began to silently consolidate his newly advanced Pangu's sacred body. His Pangu's sacred body had been advancing rapidly during this period of time. After reaching the 6 stars realm, it directly advanced to the 6 stars realm. Now he had to consolidate it. Otherwise, it would leave behind hidden dangers. He was in a huge flying divine artifact. The flying divine artifact looked like a huge pavilion. At the bottom of the pavilion, there was a strong airflow spurting out, pushing the huge pavilion forward. This flying divine artifact belonged to Kong Xinyu. Basically, all the disciples of the sun-chasing temple had corresponding rooms in it. The room Zhuowen was in was the best room in the flying divine artifact, which was arranged by Kong Xinyu. Suddenly, Zhuowen felt the room shaking more and more violently. Finally, he felt that the flying divine artifact outside suddenly stopped, as if it had braked. The powerful inertia caused Zhuowen's body to fly forward. However, Zhuowen's feet stomped on the ground, and he was as still as a rock, standing straight on the spot. Soon, the door of his room opened, and Jiang Qixing came in. At this moment, Jiang Qixing's face was slightly flustered, and his eyes were solemn. "Brother Jiang, did someone intercept the flying divine artifact?" When something happened to the flying divine artifact, Zhuowen's divine senses had already probed outside. He found that there was an invisible formation ripple in front of the flying divine artifact. Obviously, someone had set up a formation in advance, with the purpose of blocking the flying divine artifact of the sun-chasing temple. Let's go out and have a look," Zhuowen said, and walked out of the deck with Jiang Qixing. At this moment, Kong Xinyu was standing at the head of the deck with dozens of people of the sun-chasing temple looking solemnly at the formation restriction that intercepted the flying divine artifact in front of them. Chapter 3078. Blood Evil Array. It's the Blood Evil Array. It seems that the blood prison assassins are on the move. Kong Xinyu's eyes were gloomy. When he saw Zhuowen, he saluted Zhuowen and said in a deep voice, "Blood prison assassins." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes as a faintly discernible killing intent burst forth from the depths of his eyes. He was sure that he was the target of these blood prison assassins. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Several figures flew out of the blood evil array. The one in the lead was dressed in a gorgeous blood-red robe and had shoulder-length blood-red hair. However, this person's aura was extremely powerful, even more powerful than Kong Xinyu's. The second killer of the blood prison's 7 killers, Kong Xinyu's pupils shrank the moment he saw the man in the blood-red robe. The second killer's position in the blood prison was second only to the first killer. He was extremely powerful and should be at the middle stage of the Lord of Creation realm, 1 level stronger than Kong Xinyu. Moreover, the blood prison assassins were much stronger than ordinary practitioners. Kong Xinyu was probably no match for the second killer. The second killer slowly walked to the front of the blood prison assassins and stopped about 500 meters away from the flying divine device. He first glanced at Zhuowen, who was standing on one side of the deck, and then set his eyes on Kong Xinyu. Kong Xinyu said coldly, "Blood Prison's second killer, why did you intercept the team of Chasing Sun Temple? Could it be that you intend to go against our sun-chasing temple?" The second killer's eyes were cold, and he said indifferently, "Elder Kong, we don't want to go against your Chasing Sun Temple. The reason why we intercepted your flying divine device is because we want to ask for a person from you. As long as you hand over this person, we'll leave at once. We won't make things difficult for you." Kong Xinyu frowned slightly and said coldly, "Everyone here belongs to the Chasing Sun Temple. Do you really think I'll give you a person from the Chasing Sun Temple? Although the blood prison has many experts, It's not a Taoist palace-level force. Do you really intend to go against our chasing Sun Temple? The second killer said with a fake smile, the Blood Prison is indeed not as powerful as the chasing Sun Temple, but your chasing Sun Temple may not find our base. Elder Kong, I'm not going to talk nonsense with you today. I only want this Zhuowen beside you. This Zhuowen isn't a member of your sun-chasing temple, right? Taking him away will have no effect on your sun-chasing temple. Kong Xingyu stared blankly. His gaze was strange. In fact, he already knew that Long Wen's real name was Zhuowen. That Long Wen should be an alias. Moreover, after Zhuowen left the Starry Sky battlefield with Zhuai Ri Temple, he had restored his appearance and no longer disguised himself. The reason why Kong Xingyu had a strange look on his face was because Second Kill dared to target Zhuowen. After all, this guy was a ruthless person who could control the Starry Sky Tower and single-handedly defeat the foreign race army. Even Senki Yin had suffered a great loss at the hands of Zhuowen. Even their sun-chasing temple wanted to befriend this person, yet this Blood Prison's head had been squeezed. He actually wanted to take away Zhuowen. Wasn't this courting death? However, Kong Xingyu also knew that everything that happened in the Starry Sky Tower had not been long ago. The rumors about Zhuowen had not spread yet, so it was understandable that Blood Prison did not know about it. If Blood Prison knew about Zhuowen's feat in the Starry Sky Tower, even if he had a pig brain, he would not dare to take the initiative to provoke Zhuowen again. What? You don't want to hand it over? Second Kill looked a little impatient and looked coldly at Kong Xingyu, not concealing the strong killing intent in his eyes. Zhuowen did not speak and just stood quietly in place. Kong Xingyu knew that Zhuowen wanted to see his attitude. If he wanted to be a third party, then Zhuowen would definitely not get close to their sun-chasing temple in the future. No, Kong Xingyu made a decision and refuted Second Kill. Good, good, good. Then I will kill you all today. Elder Kong, don't blame me for being ruthless. You asked for it. Do it. Second Kill was very decisive. As soon as he finished speaking, he rushed out like a bolt of lightning toward Kong Xingyu. Behind him, dozens of Blood Prison killers rushed out silently, like the most loyal soldiers who would only obey orders. Let's go. Kong Xingyu gritted his teeth and led the sun-chasing temple's cultivators to meet them. Jiang Qixing also intended to follow, but he was stopped by Zhuowen. Brother Jiang, accompany me to watch a good show first. Zhuowen said with a faint smile. Jiang Qixing glanced at Zhuowen, hesitated for a moment, and then nodded. He knew that Zhuowen wanted to see Kong Xingyu's attitude. If Kong Xingyu really wanted to invite Zhuowen, he would certainly do his best to fight against the enemy. The Blood Prison killers and the sun-chasing temple's cultivators soon fought, and the aftermath of the battle spread out like a mighty wave. Although the number of people on both sides was about the same, it was obvious that the fighting strength of the Blood Prison was much stronger, and the sun-chasing temple was forced to retreat. Jiang Qixing could not sit still. Zhuowen pulled him again and said, Brother Jiang, it's time for you to watch my performance. With that, Zhuowen took out the Ho-E Divine Bow and Ho-E Divine Arrow. He pulled the string of the Ho-E Divine Arrow to a full moon and pointed the arrow at Second Kill, who was suppressing Kong Xingyu. Whoosh! The Divine Arrow, with a peerless killing intent, cut through the void and soon arrived in front of Second Kill. Second Kill was attacking Kong Xingyu crazily, and Kong Xingyu was almost out of breath. But soon, he felt that something was wrong. An extreme killing intent swept over him, which made his scalp tingle and his whole body break out in cold sweat. He saw a divine arrow with a peerless killing intent sweep in front of him in an instant, and then, under his incredulous gaze, it drilled into his chest. This divine arrow was so terrifying that he could not even think of resisting. When his body was torn apart and shattered, his mind was filled with fear, and he screamed in horror. However, his scream did not last long. His whole body was torn into a cloud of blood mist, but Second Kill's divine soul was very powerful. The moment his body was destroyed, he immediately escaped. Unfortunately, Zhuowen had been waiting for this moment. With a wave of his sleeve, he wrapped and sealed Second Kill's divine soul. Kong Xingyu hurriedly retreated. Looking at Second Kill, who had completely turned into a cloud of blood mist, he breathed a sigh of relief and quickly bowed gratefully to Zhuowen on the deck. If it weren't for Zhuowen's support, he would have been seriously injured by Second Kill. After killing two of them, Zhuowen took out one creation-grade divine arrow after another from his great world and fired one arrow after another. The terrifying divine arrows cut through the sky and shot straight out, killing the blood prison killers one after another. Chapter 3079. One kill. Many thanks for Senior Long's help. Kong Xingyu hurriedly came to Zhuowen's side, a flattering smile on his face as he expressed his gratitude to Zhuowen. Zhuowen nodded, then with a flip of his right hand, Second Kill's divine soul appeared in his palm. Second Kill's expression was ferocious as he stared at Zhuowen and constantly shouted, "Zhuowen, I really didn't expect you to have such a terrifying divine artifact, but your strength is too weak. Now that you have provoked our blood prison, you will never have a day of peace." Zhuowen's eyes were calm as he said, indifferently, "I don't want to have a day of peace, but your blood prison. Tell me, where is the blood prison station?" Second Kill's face became even more ferocious as he laughed. "You think too much? You want me to tell you where the blood prison station is? Do you think that's possible? I have my own way." Zhuowen's eyes were indifferent as he pressed his right hand on Second Kill's divine soul and immediately grasped it, causing Second Kill to scream miserably. Zhuowen coldly snorted, and with a twist of his right hand, Second Kill's screams came to an abrupt end. His eyes were blank, as if he had lost his mind. Immediately after, Zhuowen forcibly extracted the memories of Second Kill's divine soul, and after examining them, his eyes were filled with coldness. The blood prison was really cunning. They actually placed the blood prison's encampment in a dimensional space. The heavenly Tao laws in this space weren't complete, so the effect of cultivation was much worse than the outside world. The blood prison lord's attack was really bold. It was no wonder that so many forces in the host territory couldn't find the blood prison station. "Brother Long, are you planning to go to the blood prison station?" Jiang Qixing saw Zhuowen's actions and guessed Zhuowen's intentions, so he couldn't help asking. "Yes, it's not the first time the blood prison has provoked me. Before, I wasn't strong enough, so I didn't want to cause trouble for the blood prison. But now it's different. Brother Jiang and Elder Kong, if you can't wait, you can leave first. As long as you give me the address of the sun-chasing temple, I'll go there directly." Zhuowen looked at Kong Xingyu and Jiang Qixing and said softly. Jiang Qixing could only nod. He took out a jade slip from his spirit ring and handed it to Zhuowen. This jade slip records the exact location of the sun-chasing temple. After taking the jade slip, Zhuowen cupped his hands at Jiang Qixing, and with a stomp of his right foot, he disappeared on the spot. "Qixing, you don't have to worry too much. Senior Long's strength is far beyond our imagination. He easily killed Double Killer. Although First Killer is stronger than Double Killer, there's a limit to his strength. He shouldn't be a match for Senior Long," Kong Xingyu said to Jiang Qixing. Jiang Qixing nodded. He wasn't too worried about Zhuowen. He knew Zhuowen's strength better than Kong Xingyu. "Elder Kong, let's go first." Jiang Qixing returned to his room. Zhuowen sat on the space-time wheel and entered the space-time tunnel. He passed through one space-time tunnel after another, moving forward according to Double Killer's memory. The blood prison's encampment was quite far away from him. It would take at least half a month for Zhuowen to enter that dimensional space. Since he had half a month, Zhuowen naturally wouldn't waste it. He planned to try to refine a Genesis-grade divine pill. If he could successfully refine a Genesis-grade divine pill, then he could smoothly become a Genesis-grade alchemist. In the room of the space-time wheel, Zhuowen looked at the Pill Emperor cauldron in front of him. There were various divine herbs piled up next to the cauldron. The surface of the divine herbs emitted a sparkling light, indicating that these divine herbs were extraordinary. The Pill Emperor turtle was lying in a pile of divine herbs, bored to death. It rolled its eyes and looked at Zhuowen. Finally, it muttered something like, "Hurry up and refine the pill." Zhuowen knew that he had to be calm before refining the pill, so he adjusted his state of mind to the calmest level before refining the pill. Finally, Zhuowen opened his eyes. With a flip of his right hand, a burst of divine flame surged out and shot into the bottom of the Pill Emperor cauldron. Then he slapped the lid of the Pill Emperor cauldron, and the lid flew up. Zhuowen's right hand orderly placed the divine herbs piled up next to him into the cauldron. After putting all the divine herbs into the cauldron, Zhuowen closed the lid and focused on controlling the divine flame. This time, he was refining a Genesis-grade divine pill called the 7 Lives Healing Sword Pill. This Genesis-grade divine pill was one of the more basic Genesis-grade divine pills. It was also one of the easier Genesis-grade divine pills to refine. Whether it was the technique or the divine herbs, they weren't particularly complicated. 3 days later, the Pill Emperor cauldron suddenly emitted a muffled sound. Immediately, plumes of black smoke drifted out of the cauldron lid. The Pill Emperor tortoise, who was lying not far from the Pill Emperor cauldron, drooped its head and said with some disappointment, "It looks like the refinement failed this time." Zhuowen wasn't discouraged. After all, this was his first time refining a Genesis-grade divine pill. It was normal for him to fail. In any case, there were many medicinal herbs for the 7 Lives Healing Sword Pill in his great world. He could afford to fail many times. Taking out another set of 7 Lives Healing Sword Pill herbs, Zhuowen threw them into the cauldron one by one, ignited the divine flame again, and began to focus on refining. Second failure. Third failure. After Zhuowen failed for the 5th time, a look of enlightenment appeared in his eyes. However, he didn't continue refining. Instead, he put away the Pill Emperor cauldron. "I say, Zhuowen, why don't you continue refining? Your chances of success next time are very high," the Pill Emperor tortoise hurriedly said. "We've arrived at the Blood Prison's encampment. Let's talk about it after I deal with the Blood Prison's one kill." Zhuowen stood up and put the Pill Emperor tortoise into his great world. After that, he disappeared from the room. This was a huge blood-colored palace. It floated in the depths of the void dimension like rootless duckweed. At this moment, there were 7 blood-colored thrones in the depths of the blood-colored palace. However, among these 7 thrones, only the centermost throne still had a blood-colored figure sitting on it. The remaining 6 blood thrones were empty. The blood-robed figure sitting on the centermost throne was the master of the blood prison. 1 kill of the blood prison's 7 kills. 1 kill was dressed in a blood-colored robe and wore a sinister blood-colored mask. His exposed eyes were filled with a sinister blood-red color. Even 2nd kill has fallen? What's going on? 1 kill's eyes contained fury, and his voice was suppressed and terrifying. He really couldn't understand why a mid-stage Lord of Creation like 2nd kill had fallen while trying to kill a cultivator who hadn't even reached the 3rd step of Tao validation. Was Zhuowen really that strange? Speaking of which, among the 7 kills sent by the blood prison, other than 1 kill, the other 6 had been sent to deal with Zhuowen. However, All of them had fallen without exception. Soft footsteps suddenly rang out in the empty blood-red hall. One kill raised his head and looked at a figure walking over from the end of the corridor. Chapter 3080. Breaking through, the middle-aged man came before the throne, knelt on one knee, and said in a deep voice, "Wuhan greets Lord First Kill." First Kill glanced at Wu Henshui and nodded. Wu Henshui stood up and looked at First Kill on the throne uneasily. He did not know why First Kill suddenly ordered him to come over. "Wu Hen, I heard you say that Zhuowen came from the 8 heavens." First Kill looked at Wu Henshui and asked casually, "That's right. Back then, I was sealed in a secret realm in the 8 heavens. Later, Zhuowen broke into the place where I was sealed. I schemed against him and escaped. However, at that time, Zhuowen had not even reached the Tao confirming realm. In my eyes, he was just an ant that I could kill with a wave of my hand. I did not care about him at all." Wu Henshui answered carefully, "Not even at the Tao confirming realm. How long has it been? Why is Zhuowen's cultivation speed so fast? It's unbelievable." First Kill frowned, finding it hard to believe. "Lord First Kill, I think that Zhuowen must have some big secret. Otherwise, how could he cultivate so fast? It goes against common sense." Wu Henshui hurriedly echoed, "Wu Hen, Second Kill is dead. Moreover, he died after going to assassinate Zhuowen." One Kill suddenly said. Traceless Blood's body trembled. He jerked his head up, his eyes filled with disbelief. When Second Kill was sent out, Wu Henshui knew, but he did not know who Second Kill was going to assassinate. When he came to the hall today, he was surprised that Second Kill did not appear. It had been half a month, and the assassination mission could not have lasted for so long. Now he got the news that Second Kill was dead, and it was because of the assassination of Zhuowen. Was it done by Zhuowen? Wu Henshui trembled, his voice filled with disbelief. "It should be. I originally thought that Second Kill was enough to kill Zhuowen, but now it seems that I was wrong. This boy has already become a legend." First Kill's voice was somewhat helpless, and he continued, "In the future, our blood prison will not provoke Zhuowen anymore. This kid is no longer someone our blood prison can afford to provoke." When Traceless Blood heard the helplessness in One Kill's tone, his gaze became even more complicated. He recalled the scene when he first met Zhuowen in the 8 heavens. At that time, he looked at Zhuowen as if he was looking at a funny ant. Zhuowen was so weak that he could kill him with a wave of his hand. But now this guy, who was nothing more than an ant in his eyes, had killed 6 of the blood prison's 7 killers. And the strongest one, the First Killer, had said that he didn't want to provoke Zhuowen because the First Killer was afraid of Zhuowen. The affairs of the world are truly unpredictable. Traceless Blood sighed softly in his heart, lamenting that the wheel of fortune had turned too quickly. "You didn't intend to provoke me, but I didn't say that I would spare you." Suddenly, a great voice rang out from outside. It passed through the palace and enveloped the surroundings of the blood-red palace. It rang out loudly like a great bell. The faces of One Kill and Traceless Blood changed dramatically. One Kill stood up abruptly, his figure flashed, and the dome of the palace shattered. A giant energy hand stretched out from the gap in the broken dome and slammed into the place where One Kill was standing. The throne was completely smashed into powder, falling apart into pieces. Above the gap in the dome, a figure slowly descended and finally landed on the throne that had already turned into ruins. Both One Kill and Traceless Blood's eyes fell on the figure standing on the ruins, and their faces changed at the same time. "Zhuowen," the two said in unison. The figure that descended from the sky was indeed Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen's eyes were as cold as a knife. The moment he found the blood-red palace, he found that there were very few blood prison killers in the palace, and there was no spirit array on the surface, so he immediately broke in. Zhuowen also knew why there was no spirit array to protect the blood-red palace. In this dimensional space, the laws of heaven were incomplete. Even if there was a powerful spirit array set up in the blood-red palace, it could not exert much power. Whoosh! Whoosh! The moment Zhuowen broke the dome in the depths of the blood-red palace, it completely alarmed the entire blood prison. Streaks of blood-red light swept out from the surroundings of the blood-red palace and rushed into the broken dome. If one looked carefully, these streaks of blood-red light turned out to be blood prison killers. Hundreds of blood prison killers rushed into the broken dome like a blood-red torrent and rushed straight down toward Zhuowen below. Zhuowen stood in the ruins, his eyes as cold as a knife. Streaks of sparkling light emerged from his body, as if his body was forged from some kind of rare glass. Zhuowen formed a hand seal with both hands and used the profound skill Sky Opening Blade. 2 white blades of air that were 2 meters long appeared in his palms. Bang! Zhuowen leaped and waved his hands. Suddenly, a stream of blade light burst out. The milky white light overshadowed the blood-red torrent formed by hundreds of blood prison killers in one fell swoop. Puchi! Puchi! The blood prison killers fell from the torrent one after another, fell to the ground, and turned into stiff corpses and remained motionless. When One Kill and Traceless Shui saw this scene, their faces were extremely unsightly. Zhuowen's strength was somewhat beyond their imagination. Hundreds of blood prison killers joined forces, but they were completely crushed. We can't let him continue to kill. One Kill snorted coldly, looking at the continuously decreasing blood-red torrent. His heart was bleeding. It must be known that the blood prison had spent a lot of effort to cultivate these elite killers. Now, these elite killers, who had been cultivated for many years, were constantly decreasing like wheat harvested in autumn. How could One Kill bear such a loss? One Kill made his move. One Kill stomped his feet and shot out like a cannonball. At the same time, waves of blood-red energy gushed out of the pores all over One Kill's body, condensing into an endless river of blood. This river of blood started from One Kill's body, and the end point of the river of blood was constantly being derived. The direction of the river of blood's derivation happened to be the direction where Zhuowen was. Zhuowen instantly killed 2 blood prison killers who wanted to kill him. He also noticed the river of blood released by One Kill. The river of blood was getting closer and closer, like a surging tide during high tide. It was very fast and had the momentum to overturn rivers and seas. Zhuowen didn't dare to be careless. One Kill's strength was much stronger than that of the second kill. His cultivation should be at the late stage of the Lord of Creation realm. So Zhuowen didn't dare to be careless. Although his Pango's sacred body had advanced to the late-stage 6-star realm, his strength was actually not weaker than that of an ordinary late-stage Lord of Creation. However, One Kill was obviously not an ordinary late-stage Lord of Creation. His strength was also much stronger than that of an ordinary late-stage Lord of Creation. If Zhuowen faced him head-on, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Chapter 3081. Secrete in the past, Zhuowen was not strong enough, so it was difficult for him to draw the Ho-I Divine Bow. However, since the level of his Pango's sacred body became higher and higher, it became easier for him to draw the Ho-I Divine Bow. Now he could draw the bowstring of the Ho-I Divine Bow to its tightest state in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! The blood river was very fast. The moment Zhuowen drew the bowstring to its fullest, it arrived in front of Zhuowen. The blood river was extremely huge, like an ancient blood python. Under the blood river, Zhuowen was as small as an ant. However, Zhuowen's expression was terrifyingly calm. He gently loosened his fingers. With a whoosh, the Ho-E divine arrow turned into a blood-red light and rushed out with a terrifying killing intent. Boom! The Ho-E divine arrow was too terrifying. The moment it entered the blood river, it immediately stirred up a large amount of blood water. The entire blood river began to tremble violently. Scattered drops of blood splashed out. These drops of blood fell to the ground, forming a misty blood rain. Wherever the Ho-E divine arrow passed, the blood river collapsed and turned into countless blood foam. The deeper the divine arrow went, the more the blood river collapsed. After a while, the divine arrow reached the end of the blood river. At this moment, the entire blood river collapsed and exploded into countless blood-red raindrops falling from the sky. One Kill's expression changed drastically. He did not expect that his strongest attack would actually be broken so easily. However, the divine arrow was too fast. He did not have time to be shocked. He immediately flew back, trying to avoid the Ho-E divine arrow. However, One Kill soon found that his continuous retreat was completely futile. The killing intent of the Ho-E divine arrow was too terrifying. It had completely locked onto him. No matter how he dodged or how many angles he changed in midair, it was all in vain. He had been locked onto by the Ho-E divine arrow. The only thing he could do now was to block the divine arrow with all his strength. Thinking of this, One Kill's eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness. As he retreated, he kept accumulating energy, condensing it into a thick blood-red shield in front of him. As One Kill continued to pour his energy into the blood-red shield, the blood-red color on the surface of the shield became brighter and more viscous. Zhuowen stood quietly in the distance. When he saw First Kill's actions, the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. To him, killing with one strike was simply courting death. When Ho-Yi's godly arrow was at its most powerful state, it could kill any cultivator below the level of Lord Skirich with a single arrow. Even though this attack was extraordinarily powerful, it was still like a mantis trying to stop a chariot when faced with Ho-Yi's godly arrow in its most powerful state. Rumble! After First Kill prepared what he believed to be his strongest defense, Ho-Yi's divine arrow finally landed on the blood-red shield, howling like a furious dragon. You must block it. This was the thought that flashed through One Kill's mind the moment the divine arrow landed on his shield. But soon his heart turned cold. The blood-red shield that he had painstakingly set up was like a piece of paper in front of the divine arrow, instantly shattering into pieces. As for that divine arrow, it continued to grow larger and larger before his eyes. When the divine arrow was released to the maximum, he felt an intense pain in his forehead. Then his vision turned black, and he lost consciousness. Plop! Looking at One Kill's body, which had been pierced through by Ho-Yi's divine arrow and fell to the ground, Zhuowen's eyes were cold and emotionless. There were only a few blood prison killers left in the surroundings, and they all froze. The Lord of Blood Prison, one of the 7 killers, was an invincible existence in their hearts. But now he had died in front of them. Moreover, he was killed by someone else. The remaining blood prison assassins no longer attacked Zhuowen. Instead, they began to flee in panic, no longer having the slightest fighting spirit in their hearts. Zhuowen did not pay attention to the fleeing blood prison assassins. Instead, he looked at Traceless Blood, who was also preparing to escape. Traceless Blood also noticed that Zhuowen was looking at him. His whole body trembled as he knelt on the ground and said to Zhuowen, "Lord Zhuowen, this assassination has nothing to do with me. I beg you to spare my life." Zhuowen was indifferent, looking at Traceless Blood, who was kneeling in front of him. He felt a little emotional. When he first met Traceless Blood in the 8 heavens, Traceless Blood was an expert of the second step of the Tao confirming realm. He was absolutely the strongest in the 8 heavens, an existence that could crush all the heavenly lords. At that time, Zhuowen hadn't even reached the Tao confirming realm. He could only look up to Traceless Blood. Even when Traceless Blood tricked him, he didn't dare to say a word, for fear that Traceless Blood would find an excuse to kill him. But now, the tables had turned. Traceless Blood, who he looked up to in the past, was now kneeling in front of him, wagging his tail and begging for mercy. I haven't settled the debt with you for the 8 heavens. Last time, you brought 3 killers to kill me. Do you think I'll let you go so easily? Zhuowen said expressionlessly. Traceless Blood's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground and said, Lord Zhuo, I have a secret to share with you. I only beg you to spare my life. Tell me, if this secret is valuable, it can be exchanged for your life. Zhuowen said, rubbing his fingers. Traceless Blood bowed again and quickly said, over the years, the blood prison assassins have killed countless people and obtained countless treasures at the same time. In this dimensional space, the heavenly Tao rules are not perfect, but the blood prison can constantly cultivate powerful blood prison assassins, and the blood prison 7 killers all have extraordinary cultivation. Didn't Lord Zhuo suspect this? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. Zhuowen did suspect what Traceless Blood said, but he didn't think too much about it. Now that Traceless Blood took the initiative to mention it, Zhuowen couldn't help but start thinking. It seems that the secret you mentioned should be related to this phenomenon. Zhuowen said, yes, the reason why the blood prison can drift in the dimensional space and cultivate normally here is mainly because of a stone. Traceless Blood revealed a flattering smile and continued, the stone is hidden in a secret room at the bottom of the blood prison. If Lord Zhuo is interested, I can take you to see it. Zhuowen still rubbed his fingers and didn't immediately agree. The long silence made Traceless Blood a little uneasy, and he could only reluctantly show a smile. Take me to see it, Zhuowen said in a flat voice. Okay, Lord Zhuo, just follow me. Traceless Blood was overjoyed when he saw Zhuowen agree. He immediately led Zhuowen deeper into the blood prison. This was a rather simple secret room. It was very closed and very humid. On the surface of the surrounding rock walls, water often dripped and fell to the ground, making a crisp sound. Zhuowen and Traceless Blood stood at the entrance of the secret room and looked at the center of the room. There was a simple stone table in the center of the room. Chapter 3082. Mysterious stone. This stone was very ordinary. It was grayish-black in color, and apart from its surface being as smooth as a mirror, it was no different from an ordinary stone. Zhuo slowly walked to the front of the stone table and stopped half a meter away. Within half a meter of the stone table, a bright and colorful energy barrier appeared, blocking Zhuowen outside of it. On the surface of the barrier, ripples appeared, the result of Zhuowen touching it. Was this restriction set up by your blood prison? Zhuowen turned his head and looked at Shui Wuhan, who was still trembling behind him. No, this restriction was formed by the stone itself. Lord First Kill is the strongest array master in the blood prison, and his array Tao has reached the Genesis realm, but he was unable to break the restriction on the surface of this stone. Shui Wuhan honestly explained. Also, the reason why the blood prison was built in the void dimension with incomplete heavenly Tao laws is mainly because of this stone. What a mysterious stone. Shui Wen's eyes revealed a look of surprise. The moment he entered the blood prison palace, he felt that it was different. In the void dimension, the heavenly Tao laws were incomplete, and logically speaking, the blood prison palace should be the same. But this was not the case. The heavenly Tao laws in the blood prison palace were complete and even richer than those in the outside world. Previously, He had doubts in his heart, but now he finally understood why the Blood Prison Palace's laws were so complete and could even be said to be rich. It was because of this ordinary-looking stone in front of him. What is the origin of this stone? Shuowen's eyes were filled with surprise as he blurted out. Shui Wuhan revealed a bitter smile and shook his head. I don't know. Even the founder of the Blood Prison Palace did not recognize the origin of this stone. He only knew that this stone can make up for the flaws of the heavenly Tao laws. It is extremely mysterious. Shuowen's expression was solemn. The heavenly Tao laws could be said to be the highest laws in this starry sky. When the starry sky was first opened, the heavenly Tao laws had already been born, planning the various laws and trajectories of this starry sky. It was something even more ancient than Pangu. He had never heard of anything that could make up for the flaws of the heavenly Tao laws. But this ordinary-looking stone in front of him had done it, and he realized that this stone was not simple. Lord Shui, this stone has an unusual origin. Feel free to take it. I also know the location of the Blood Prison's treasury. I can tell you all of this. I just hope that Senior Shui can let me live. Traceless Blood revealed a fawning smile, his voice trembling. Tell me the location of the Blood Prison treasury, and you can leave. Shuowen did not intend to make things difficult for Shui Wuhan. The enmity between him and Traceless Shui wasn't that great, and now that he had destroyed the Blood Prison, Traceless Shui wouldn't be so stupid as to seek revenge in the future. Shui Wuhan bowed repeatedly, took out a jade slip, and told Shuowen that the jade slip recorded the specific location of the Blood Prison treasure vault. Then he quickly left. Shuowen ignored Traceless Blood. Instead, he summoned Xiaohe and gave the jade slip to Xiaohe, telling him to go to the Blood Prison treasury to investigate. He wanted to stay behind and try to take away the mysterious stone. Boom, boom, boom. Shuowen's body exuded a crystal-clear light, and a majestic aura erupted from him. In just an instant, he had thrown out thousands of punches. Each punch contained a terrifying power that could shake the heavens and earth. Within half a meter of the stone table, dense ripples appeared, as if countless stones had been thrown into the water. Shuowen took a few steps back and stared at the barrier that still existed in front of him with a dignified expression. The strength of the barrier on the surface of the stone table was somewhat beyond his expectations. His all-out attack was actually unable to weaken the restriction in the slightest. Shuowen stood where he was with a frown on his face. He had tried to use formations to break the restriction, but he realized that the restriction was very strange. Even with his level, he was unable to decipher the specific structure and process of the formation. I wonder if the True Alchemy Array record has records of this strange barrier. Shuowen took out the True Alchemy Array record, opened the Spirit Array chapter, and began to carefully read the contents. The True Alchemy Array record recorded the refining methods of many pills and spirit arrays, so it was very broad. Ever since Shuowen obtained the True Alchemy Array record, he had been studying it, but he still hadn't completely understood this book. Shuowen knew that once he completely understood this book, his alchemy skills would most likely reach the level of transcending heaven grade. Soon, Shuowen saw a description of this spirit array on one of the pages of the Spirit Array chapter. It turned out that this spirit array was called the Guardian Vajra Array. It was a good fortune grade spirit array, but the difficulty of breaking it was second to none among all good fortune grade spirit arrays. If it were an ordinary good fortune grade spirit array, Shuowen could barely break it by relying on the profound Hong Meng Limitless. However, this Guardian Vajra array was obviously not an ordinary good fortune grade spirit array, so Shuowen was helpless. Fortunately, the True Alchemy Array chapter mentioned the weakness of this Guardian Vajra array, as well as the method to break it. Shuowen started to break the Guardian Vajra array according to the method in the True Alchemy Array record. What surprised him was that he only spent 2 hours to break the Guardian Vajra array. After breaking the Guardian Vajra formation, Zhuowen reached out with his right hand and grabbed the stone on the stone table. A warm current flowed out from the mysterious stone. The warm current carried a mysterious energy, and the moment it entered Zhuowen's body, it rushed to the depths of his mind. Zhuowen's body shook, and a look of enlightenment involuntarily appeared in his eyes. He felt that his perception, with the help of that mysterious energy, was infinitely magnified and had undergone a qualitative change. Many of the doubts and questions he had in the past were suddenly enlightened at this moment, and all the difficult and complicated illnesses suddenly came to a realization. Zhuowen immediately sat on the spot and took out the Emperor Pill Furnace and a set of herbs for the 7 Lives Healing Sword Pill from the outside world. He began to methodically throw the herbs into the Emperor Pill Furnace and ignite the divine fire. His movements were as smooth as moving clouds and flowing water. The Pill Emperor Turtle looked at all of this with a dumbfounded expression, but when it saw Zhuowen refining the 7 Lives Healing Sword Pill again, its eyes revealed a look of ecstasy. This guy has finally been enlightened. Previously, I advised him to refine the 7 Lives Healing Sword Pill again, but this fellow is simply stubborn and insists on going to the blood prison for revenge first. Now that he has taken his revenge, he finally plans to refine it again. I hope the refining this time will be successful. The Pill Emperor Turtle rubbed its hands in a very human-like manner, and a slight smile appeared on its face, looking very annoying. 3 days later, white smoke began to billow from the Emperor Pill Furnace's lid. Accompanying the white smoke was an extremely rich medicinal fragrance. Chapter 3083. Tao Discussion Conference. Looks like I'm about to succeed. The Elixir Emperor Turtle laughed foolishly. Then he saw that Zhuowen had stood up and slapped the lid of the cauldron with his right hand. Instantly, 12 stars flew out of the cauldron. Each star represented a 7 Lives Healing Sword Pill. The Elixir Emperor Turtle took out a jade bottle from its shell and put the 12 7 Lives Healing Sword Pills into it. This Zhuowen is really not bad. It's his first time refining a Genesis Divine Pill, and he can actually refine a special grade Divine Pill. What a monster! The Elixir Emperor Turtle closed the bottle happily. The moment it put the Divine Pills away, it had already sensed that the quality of these 12 7 Lives Healing Sword Pills was shockingly high. After putting away the jade bottle, the Elixir Emperor Turtle thought that Zhuowen would stop there. However, it realized that Zhuowen didn't stop the divine fire under the cauldron. Instead, the divine fire burned even brighter. At the same time, Zhuowen took out another set of herbs from the great world. The Elixir Emperor Turtle's eyes widened the moment it saw this set of herbs. It recognized this set of herbs. It was the main ingredient for refining the Supreme Meteor Dragon Pill. This Supreme Meteor Dragon Pill wasn't an ordinary divine pill. It was a creation divine pill. In other words, Zhuowen had just successfully refined a Genesis grade divine pill and became a Genesis grade formation Tao Divine Master. This guy immediately started refining the transformation divine pill and didn't even stop in the middle. This guy was going to defy the heavens. The Pill Emperor Turtle originally wanted to persuade Zhuowen, but after seeing the serious and focused look in Zhuowen's eyes, it abruptly stopped itself from blurting out any words of advice. Let this guy fall once. Only then will he learn his lesson. I've never heard of anyone advancing twice in a row while refining a divine pill. Moreover, he succeeded both times. The Elixir Emperor Turtle shook its head. It felt that Zhuowen's refinement was too risky. It was impossible for him to succeed. The light in Zhuowen's eyes grew brighter. He began to toss the herbs of the Wushang meteor dragon pill into the monarch pill cauldron one by one. The divine flame was set to the maximum. Time ticked by, and the pill emperor turtle was dumbfounded. This was because in the process of refining the supreme meteor dragon pill, Zhuowen actually did not make a single mistake. Every movement was so perfect. 4 days later, the lid of the emperor pill furnace actually spewed out a stream of dragon qi. This dragon qi manifested into a phantom of a giant dragon, spiraling upwards, constantly revolving around the imperial pill furnace. The powerful dragon power poured down like rain, and the surrounding space seemed to be frozen by this dragon power. After the giant dragon circled around the furnace a few times, it suddenly rushed into the furnace. The lid of the cauldron flew up, and 12 golden lights burst out from within. Damn, this guy really succeeded in refining it. This guy is trying to defy the heavens. The pill emperor turtle was dumbfounded and felt that it was unbelievable. It even forgot to collect the 12 golden lights that erupted. By the time the pill emperor turtle reacted, the 12 golden lights were about to fall to the ground. The pill emperor turtle was flustered. It barely managed to collect the 12 golden lights into another jade bottle. Motherf **, it's another unique quality supreme meteor dragon pill. This Zhuowen is really freaking abnormal. The pill emperor turtle could feel the powerful aura of the special grade in the jade bottle. It could not help but curse in a low voice. Its eyes were filled with shock. At this moment, Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were clear. I refined a Genesis-grade divine pill and a creation-grade divine pill in succession. Zhuowen recalled what he had done just now and revealed a look of disbelief. The pill emperor turtle looked at Zhuowen and handed the 2 bottles of divine pills that it had collected just now to Zhuowen. After Zhuowen finished reading, he finally believed this fact. Zhuowen held the mysterious stone in his hand. His eyes were filled with excitement. The mysterious energy that was transmitted to him from the stone could actually raise his comprehension ability to an extremely terrifying level in a short period of time. He sensed that at that moment, his comprehension ability had undergone an unprecedented transformation, and he'd entered an extremely profound state from then on. It was in that mysterious realm that he could not help but refine Genesis-grade divine pills and creation-grade divine pills in succession, and he had officially become a creation-grade alchemist. Zhuowen held the stone tightly. He wanted to test the mysterious energy in the stone again. However, he was disappointed to find that the mysterious energy could no longer be transmitted. It was as if he had used up all the mysterious energy in the stone in that instant just now. This stone really did not look much different from an ordinary stone now. Zhuowen was not discouraged. Instead, he carefully stored the mysterious stone in the great world. This mysterious stone definitely had an extraordinary origin. At this moment, Xiaohe had also returned. This fellow had a small treasure house that wasn't small. The things inside the Blood Prison's treasure house were basically taken by this fellow into his small treasure house. Zhuowen did not ask Xiaohe for the mysterious stone. For him, the mysterious stone was a great gain. Zhuowen intended to give the things in the Blood Prison treasure house to Xiaohe. Xiaohe also knew Zhuowen's thoughts, so he did not say it out loud. The two had been together for so long that they had already formed a certain tacit understanding. There were some things that were tacitly understood. There was no need to say it out loud. Ji Wuming, no wonder I was targeted by the Blood Prison assassins as soon as I came back. It turns out that Ji Wuming was behind it. Zhuowen crushed the blood-red jade slip in his hand. This jade slip was given to him by Xue Wuhan before he left. It provided information about the employer who had hired the Blood Prison assassins. This employer was the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's Ji Wuming. Anyway, I'll pass by the Pill Array Immortal Alliance on my way to the sun-chasing temple. I'll settle this account with Ji Wuming. Zhuowen's eyes were cold. He took out the space-time roulette and disappeared from the void dimension. The Pill Array Immortal Alliance was exceptionally lively today. All the cultivators of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance had entered the alliance as if they were participating in some kind of grand event. In the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, there was an extremely large plaza. Countless people were standing in a dark mass. Most of the people in the square were wearing the long robes that represented Array Dao Divine Masters and Alchemy Masters. In other words, all of the people in the square were Array Dao Divine Masters and Alchemy Masters. Today was the centennial Dao discussion of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. All the Array Dao Divine Masters and Alchemy Masters in the entire host region had gathered here. They wanted to listen to the exchange of insights on Array Dao and Alchemy Dao between the four great immortal masters and the Alliance Master, Ji Wuming. The four great immortal masters and the Alliance Master, Ji Wuming, were the highest echelons of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. They were also the most capable people in the Eastern Dao region who had studied Array Dao and Alchemy Dao to the extreme. If they could listen to the exchange of insights between such experts, it would definitely be beneficial for many Array Dao Divine Masters and Alchemy Masters. Chapter 3084. Ji Wuming. The Dao Discussion Conference is about to begin. Among the four Immortal Masters, I've only seen Immortal Master Huan Taiping. I've never seen the other three, not to mention Alliance Leader Ji Wuming. You're lucky enough to have met an Immortal Master. I haven't even met an Immortal Master yet. However, I heard that the Pill Array Immortal Alliance has chosen a fifth Immortal Master. I remember that Immortal Master's name is Zhuowen, right? That's right. After the fifth Immortal Master appeared, all the forces in the host region began to pay attention to it. However, that Zhuowen seems to be very boring. Not many people have seen him before. It seems that Zhuowen didn't attend this time. It's really strange. Could it be that the rumor that Zhuowen is the fifth Immortal Master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance is just a rumor? Who knows? Look, the four Immortal Masters and Alliance Leader Ji Wuming are here. Suddenly, someone pointed to the sky and shouted, attracting the attention of the people in the square. A streak of flowing light came from the horizon like a falling meteor and soon landed on the high platform at the front of the square. The stream of light faded away, revealing 5 figures. The leader was a white-haired young man with a dignified appearance. This white-haired young man had a dignified aura. The 4 Immortal Masters standing behind the white-haired young man looked middle-aged. However, they stood behind the white-haired young man like obedient puppies. They stood respectfully and motionlessly. This white-haired young man was the Alliance Leader, Ji Wuming. The 4 people behind him were the 4 Immortal Masters of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. They were Huan Taiping, Fang Zisher, Jiang Kang, and Xiao Yi. Ji Wuming looked at the crowd in the square with a satisfied expression. He waved his hands in front of him. The noisy square suddenly quieted down. I'm very happy that everyone took the time to attend the Dao Discussion Conference. This is an honor for me and the entire Pill Array Immortal Alliance. The square was filled with applause. Today's Dao Discussion Conference is similar to the previous years. I, Ji Wuming, will discuss the experience of Array Dao and Pill Dao with the 4 Immortal Masters. If you have any questions, you can boldly raise your doubts. We will answer your questions on the spot. Ji Wuming's beautiful words won the approval of everyone present. Next, Ji Wuming and the 4 Immortal Masters sat on the 5 seats that had been arranged for them. Ji Wu ordered the four immortal masters to discuss the Tao of alchemy and the Tao of alchemy face to face, pointing out the relationship and opposition between the Tao of alchemy and the Tao of alchemy. After a round of discussion, all the people in the square revealed expressions of enlightenment. There were even some radical fellows who could not help but shout loudly in the square in joy. Of course, the Pill-Array Immortal Alliance showed no mercy to these people and took them away one by one. Following that, the alchemists and god formation masters in the square raised their own questions after the discussion. Ji Wuming and the four immortal masters were indeed the best pill refiners and god array masters of the Pill-Array Immortal Alliance. They basically answered these questions perfectly and even gave the questioner some thought-provoking answers. As time passed, the number of questioners gradually decreased, and the voices of questions became sparse. Most of the people in the square quieted down, and some even sat cross-legged on the square to silently comprehend their gains. Ji Wuming and the four immortal masters stood up. Since the Tao discussion conference was completely over, there was no need for them to stay any longer. Alliance Master Ji, I still have a question for you. Can you please answer me? Suddenly, a voice sounded from the crowd. No one in the crowd paid much attention to this figure. There were too many people asking questions during this period, so it was impossible for them to pay attention to all of them. Ji Wuming, who was about to stand up, stopped. He did not even look at the person who asked the question in the crowd and said indifferently, "Fellow Taoist, please ask away." I heard that the Pill-Array Immortal Alliance has a fifth immortal master. That immortal master is Zhuowen. I also heard that Alliance Master Ji secretly hired assassins from the Blood Prison to kill this fifth immortal master. In the crowd, the voice sounded again. This question had nothing to do with the Tao discussion conference. It was even somewhat gossipy, but it was very sharp and aggressive. Ji Wuming stood up abruptly, and his eyes finally fell on the person who asked the question in the crowd. Everyone in the square also turned their gazes to the person who asked the question. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. This was a slightly delicate young man. He slowly walked from the end of the square, and his body emitted a dignified aura. Wherever the young man passed, the people in the square automatically made way for him. This made the cultivators on the road feel incredulous. They originally did not want to make way, but when they felt the sudden burst of aura from the young man, they trembled with fear, and their hands and feet did not listen to them. The moment Ji Wuming saw the young man, his face stiffened slightly. This was because he recognized the young man's face. It turned out to be Zhuowen, whom he had been trying to kill. Even the Blood Prison's double kill failed. To kill Zhuowen? What the hell is going on? Ji Wuming's eyes flickered, and his heart beat rapidly. The moment Zhuowen left the Star battlefield, he received the news, so he contacted the Blood Prison. He thought that the Blood Prison's double kill would definitely be able to kill Zhuowen, but he did not expect that his plan would be foiled. Ji Wuming, are you surprised to see me? Zhuowen walked over step by step, but his eyes were always on Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming's eyes flickered, and he said coldly, "Who are you? How dare you question me? I won't hold you responsible. Now, get out of here, or you won't have a chance later." Many people in the crowd felt strange when they heard Ji Wuming's words. They heard a hint of surrender in Ji Wuming's tone. Were they hallucinating? "I'm here to kill you today. Do you think I'll get out of here?" Zhuowen grinned coldly, but his right foot had already stepped out, and he disappeared in an instant. The moment Zhuowen appeared, he was already in front of Ji Wuming, and his whole body was emitting a crystal-clear light. The light soared into the sky, looking terrifying, dazzling, and blazing. Ji Wuming's achievements in array and alchemy were very high, but he was not as good in martial arts as he was in array and alchemy. His cultivation was only at the early stage of the creation realm. Bang! Zhuowen threw a punch, but it was immediately blocked by a stream of energy. It was a jade slip which emitted ripple-like energy that blocked in front of Ji Wuming. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that this jade slip should be a kind of defensive array formation restriction. Moreover, it was a creation-level array formation restriction. Break! Zhuowen's eyes were cold, and he burst out all the power of the 6-star late-stage Pangu's sacred body. Chapter 3085. Hypocrite. The moment the water ripples exploded, the jade slip in front of Ji Wuming also exploded. Ji Wuming groaned and flew backward in a sorry state. His feet kept kicking in the void, and the powerful force caused the surrounding space to collapse. The moment he stabilized his body, his expression changed dramatically. Without thinking, he immediately took out a jade slip. This jade slip was also engraved with a powerful defensive formation, which blocked in front of Ji Wuming. Bang! Zhuowen once again smashed the defensive formation with a single punch. Bang! 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 Every time Ji Wuming retreated, the jade slips he took out would be consumed. Zhuowen was very patient. He followed closely behind Ji Wuming, punching again and again. With his current strength, it was too easy for him to kill Ji Wuming with one punch. The main reason was that Ji Wuming had too many jade slips, and most of them were defensive formations of the creation level. This was also why Ji Wuming could withstand Zhuowen's full-strength attacks again and again. In fact, if Zhuowen had used Hou Yi's divine arrow at the beginning, it would have immediately penetrated Ji Wuming's defensive formation and killed him. However, Zhuowen did not intend to use Hou Yi's divine arrow. After all, it was his trump card, his ultimate powerful weapon. Now, he could completely kill Ji Wuming without using Hou Yi's divine arrow. It would only take him some time, so there was no need to use Hou Yi's divine arrow. At this moment, the 4 immortal masters on the square and the high platform were stunned. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming, the leader of the Pill-Array Immortal Alliance, was now being suppressed by a strange young man. He had no room to fight back. Who is this person? He questioned the leader as soon as he arrived. And now he's attacking without saying anything? He looks familiar, but I don't have any impression of him. Maybe he has something to do with Zhuowen. Puff! Another punch came, and the space around Ji Wuming exploded. The jade slip in front of Ji Wuming broke, and Ji Wuming spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were full of horror. He had almost used up all his jade slips, but Zhuowen was like a god, constantly bombarding Ji Wuming with attacks. The dense fist shadows shrouded Ji Wuming, cutting off all his escape routes. No matter whether Ji Wuming moved forward, backward, or sideways, he would be hit by the dense fist shadows. Ji Wuming waved his sleeve and took out 9 jade slips of different colors from his spiritual ring. These 9 jade slips were made by Ji Wuming after he became a creation divine formation master. They were called the 9 Extremes Killing Formation. The 9 Extremes Killing Formation combined the attributes of a killing formation and a trapping formation. After being cultivated by Ji Wuming for nearly 10,000 years, it had gone beyond the scope of an ordinary killing formation and a trapping formation. This was the formation Ji Wuming was most proud of in his life. Bang! The moment Ji Wuming activated the 9 Extremes Killing Formation, the 9 jade slips suddenly burst out with different colors. They were like 9 strange beasts guarding Ji Wuming. The fist shadows also fell on Ji Wuming at this moment, but they were easily blocked by the 9 Extremes Killing Formation. Ji Wuming's eyes relaxed, but he was still very cautious. He did not dare to counterattack Zhuowen and kept retreating. At this moment, the 4 immortal masters on the high platform had already reacted. They jumped into the air and surrounded Ji Wuming, staring at Zhuowen solemnly. Immortal Master Zhua, don't be impulsive. Don't misunderstand a good person. Huan Taiping stood beside Ji Wuming and took the initiative to speak. He looked at Zhuowen with a slightly complicated expression. Misunderstand a good person? Zhuowen sneered and shook his head inwardly. He was very disappointed with Huan Taiping. Speaking of which, when he was in the Pill Array Immortal Alliance, he had a good relationship with Huan Taiping, who had helped him a lot. However, he was very clear that Huan Taiping did not know that Ji Wuming had secretly sent the Blood Prison Killers. Obviously, Huan Taiping was completely on Ji Wuming's side, and he was the one who had been betrayed. Of course, Zhuowen still had a question. Why did Ji Wuming want to kill him? Maybe it's about the dead flower. Zhuowen had some guesses. After all, he was an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance who had been personally appointed by Ji Wuming. Ji Wuming had no motive to kill him. However, ever since he had reported the dead flower to Ji Wuming, he had been frequently harassed by the Blood Prison Killers. Obviously, the key point was the dead flower. Huan Taiping also felt the mockery and disappointment in Zhuowen's tone, but he did not care. Instead, he calmly said, "Immortal Master Zhua, all of this is a misunderstanding. As long as you don't mess around, you will still be an immortal master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Moreover, your talent in alchemy and array Dao is so strong. The position of Alliance leader will be yours in the future. You are the future of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. Alliance leader Ji will be magnanimous and not care about the previous misunderstanding." Ji Wuming's eyes were gloomy as he said in a low voice, "Taiping is right. Immortal Master Zhua, the Pill Array Immortal Alliance has always been your home. I don't know which scoundrel misled you, but I think you should wake up now. Also, you might not know about the foundation of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. There are many restriction formations in the Pill Array Immortal Alliance's encampment, and they are basically all great formations of the creation realm. These formations complement each other and entangle with each other, forming an unprecedented restriction network. It is enough to kill any cultivator below the Heaven Ascension realm. Immortal Master Zhua, you also know that the Pill Array Immortal Alliance is loyal to our own people. However, if there is a traitor, we will definitely punish him severely." The mockery on Zhuowen's face became even more intense. Ji Wuming's words were beautiful, but unfortunately, this guy was a complete hypocrite. If he really believed this person's words, he would really be in deep trouble. On the other hand, the people in the square were shocked. Ji Wuming and Huan Taiping didn't transmit their voices, but spoke directly. Although their voices weren't loud, everyone in the square heard them clearly. Only now did they know that the ruthless person who had questioned Ji Wuming and attacked him was actually the legendary fifth Immortal Master of the Pill Array Immortal Alliance. The people in the square slowly retreated, not daring to approach the high platform in front of the square. They had all seen how terrifying Zhuowen and Ji Wuming were. If they really fought, they were afraid that the closer they were to them, the faster they would die. Ji Wuming, if you don't want people to know, then don't do it in the first place. I'm too lazy to discuss your matters with you, because I came to the Pill Array Immortal Alliance today for only one purpose, and that is to kill you." Zhuowen's eyes were filled with killing intent. He stomped his right foot and rushed toward Ji Wuming, his body emitting a dazzling light.